have to interrupt you right now.
Sorry.
Richard Hack, thank you very much. We appreciate the book is called Hughes. We want to go live right now and show you a picture of the World Trade Center where I understand, do we have it? No, we do not. We have a breaking story, though. We're going to come back with that in just a moment. First, this is Today on NBC.
As mentioned, we have a breaking news story to tell you about. Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City. It happened just a few moments ago, apparently. We have very little information available at this point in time, but on the phone, we do have Jennifer Oberstein, who apparently witnessed this event. Jennifer, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, can you please tell me what you saw and to give me any information about what's going on there?
Yes, I have to tell you, it's quite terrifying. I'm in shock right now. I came out of the subway at Bowling Green. I was heading to work in Battery Park at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and I come out, and I heard a boom, looked up, and there was a big ball of fire. I'm now looking north at the World Trade Center, and it is the left twin tower if I'm looking north. I'm in Battery Park right now, and you can hear the fire engines and the emergency crews behind me, and it is unbelievable. When the fire first burst, it was a... Hello?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
In air like I've never seen before. As you know, I used to work in news. I've never seen any fire like this in the air. And the pieces of the building were flying down. It looks like it's like the top, I can't even tell you, maybe 20 floors. Intense smoke. It's horrible. I can't even describe it.
Do you have any idea what kind of plane it was?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any idea what hit the World Trade Center?
What it was?
Yeah, what kind of plane? We're getting reports that an airplane hit the building.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Honestly, I was walking up and it looked up and saw a big boom and fire. You know, I got to tell you, we were all saying around here that it was very interesting that it would be a bomb and it would be so high up. So perhaps it was a plane. We have no talk of a plane. However, I have to tell you, there are still things flying in the air. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and it's horrifying.
Jennifer, it's Matt Lauer. I'd like to ask you, while you were close to the building, or have you, since the explosion, seen anyone who's been injured being taken out of the building? Are there ambulances dealing with people on the sidewalk around the building?
No, I have not. I have not gotten that close. I have to tell you that my father works in the World Financial Center, and I first called over there to see, because it's next door, to see, you know, if he was okay. I couldn't get through, and I'm far away right now. I thought it might be a little dangerous to get too close. I saw lots of debris coming down, and right now I'm in Battery Park. I don't know, you know, it's probably a 5-minute walk from here to the World Trade Center. But the smoke is incredible. I mean, I can't see the top of the tower. It's starting to cover the top of the second tower.
In fact, we're looking at pictures right now, Jennifer, with a huge gaping hole on the side of the building and billowing smoke. So
I'm right now, you see, yeah, I see major fire. I definitely see fire.
And Jennifer, you said you're looking north at the building, so in other words, you're south of the building,
yes,
is that right?
Correct.
Because we're looking at a picture that is looking at the north side of the building.
I'm on the exact opposite side.
And it appears that is where the largest hole is, and again, as you mentioned correctly, toward the top of the building, but on the north side, and then on the, what I think is the west side of the building, we can also see some holes there that could have been from damage once the impact occurred. Again, we've been told that this is a plane. We don't have confirmation on that, but there is an enormous hole in the north side of that building.
Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit more about what you heard when you heard this explosion? Describe it for us.
Absolutely. When I walked out of the subway, I looked at the Twin Towers because, I mean, I just always look up there. And right when I looked up, there was a boom. It wasn't that loud. Like, it wasn't huge. However, what was unbelievable was the amount of fire. It was a big ball of fire that just went up. And I looked around at people. We were all horrified. I'm stuttering because I'm in such shock. I've never seen anything like it. It's just horrible.
And of course, this is real cause for concern because the World Trade Center is one of the busiest office buildings here in New York with hundreds, perhaps thousands of workers
New
who...
York State Governor has his office,
Oh,
New
that's
York City
right.
office there.
Several thousand
and of
workers.
course, given the time that this has happened, it's only probably appropriate to surmise that people might have been in the building.
And you know, we've seen stories in the past where planes have hit buildings, small planes, and it would be hard to imagine that a small plane could create that kind of hole in a building like the World Trade Center and create the damage on the other side of the building from the sheer impact. Small planes tend to crumple and then fall down the building. Again, we haven't talked to anyone who's close to the base of the building, so we don't know what kind of debris or wreckage. Yes, go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm sorry, I'm just talking to a police officer right here, and he says yes, he heard it was a plane.
Does he have any information about what kind of plane it was, or can he tell us any more details?
May I, I'm going to put you on hold for one moment, okay?
Just to recap, if you're just joining us, you're looking at dramatic pictures of New York's World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, where a short time ago we are told that a plane crashed into the upper floors of the westernmost tower. You can see a gaping hole. That is on the north side of the building, and you can see residual damage on the west side of that building, and obviously fires are burning right now in the World Trade Center.
Tall buildings have had a real problem here in New York. There was, back in the 40s, a plane hit the Empire State Building. In the 60s, a helicopter crashed on the top of what was the Pan Am Building, now the MetLife Building. So
Right now we're getting information, Al, that it was a small commuter plane, and of course we'll let people know as soon as we have more information as to what actually caused this, and of course on everybody's mind who might have been hurt as a result of this terrible, terrible incident. We're going to be talking to more eyewitnesses coming up in just a few minutes.
We are back at 9 o'clock Eastern time on this Tuesday morning, and we're back with dramatic pictures of an accident that has happened just a short time ago. You're looking at the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, where just a few minutes ago we're told that a plane, some reports are that it was a small commuter plane, crashed into the upper floors of one of the twin towers. You can see fire and flames or smoke billowing from that tower. There is a gaping hole on the north side of the building. That's the side you're seeing to the left-hand side of your screen right now, and other damage to the west side of that building, which is to the right side of your screen. This, of course, happened just before the morning commute, before people were heading into their offices, and while I'm sure some people were already at work, immediately there's speculation or cause for concern. This is the World Trade Center that was the center of a terrorist bombing some years ago. So the questions have to be asked, was this purely an accident, or could this have been an intentional act? But either way, extensive damage has been done to this building.
it also looks like there's smoke coming out of the east side of the building. In that shot we just saw, looks like white smoke billowing out the side of the east side of the building.
Obviously, horrified commuters were absolutely devastated when they heard this explosion. We talked with somebody a moment ago about that, Jennifer Oberstein, and also another eyewitness, Elliot Walker, who is actually a producer here on the Today Show. Elliot, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Katie.
Hi, Elliot. Tell me where you are and what you saw.
Well, I live in this area. I've returned to my apartment, but I was walking down the sidewalk delivering my young daughter to school, and we heard a very loud sound, the kind of sound you hear when a plane is going fast past you, followed by an enormous crash and an immediate explosion. I don't think we could feel shockwaves, but we sort of felt like we did. And we were in a position where we could see the Trade Center almost immediately between the other buildings. And an enormous fireball that must have been 300 feet across was visible immediately. A secondary explosion, I think, and then plumes of smoke. There must have been a 3-block cloud of white smoke. Now, from where I was on the street a moment ago, you can in fact see smoke leaving the building on 3 sides. It seems to be coming out on at least 4 or 5 floors. The air is filled with hundreds of thousands of pieces of paper that are just sort of floating like confetti. The area is swarmed with emergency vehicles and sirens. Obviously, we're very sensitive to this kind of thing in this neighborhood.
Elliot, have you, of course, because of the incident that occurred in the early 1990s, have you seen any evidence, Elliot, of people being taken out of the building? You say that emergency vehicles are there, understandably so, but of course the major concern is human loss. I mean, do you know if there were many people in the building?
Oh, another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on this shot.
Oh my!
Something else has
You know what? We just saw a
like
plane circling the building.
It is in the other building.
We just saw a plane circling the building a second ago on the shot right before
I
that.
think there may have been another impact. Can you tell? I just heard another very loud bang, and a very large plane that might have been a DC-9 or a 747 just flew past my window, and I think it may have hit the Trade Center again.
To be honest, Elliot, I didn't get the impression that it was that big a plane.
It looks big from here.
I did see a plane go by a second ago, though, and it has now impacted the building. I'm trying to see if it's the different tower.
I think it may have been. I believe
tower.
the first one was World Trade Center 1, and it looks, from what I'm seeing on the television, like it may have been the second building that was
This is a
hit.
piece of tape, and we may actually see another plane enter the picture here in a second.
I wonder if there are air traffic control problems.
Let's go back to Jennifer Oberstein, who was talking to a second ago. Jennifer, did you see this happen?
Hello?
Did you
Jennifer?
just see this happen, Jennifer?
Matt, I've never seen any. It looks like a movie. I saw a large plane, like a jet, go immediately headed directly into the World Trade Center. It just flew into the other tower, coming from south to north. I watched the plane fly into the World Trade Center. It was a jet. It was a very large plane. It was going fast. It went past the Ritz-Carlton Hotel that's being built in Battery Park. It flew right past it, almost hit it, and then went in.
This is so shocking, of course, to everybody watching.
I've never seen anything like it. It literally flew itself into World Trade Center.
Obviously now we move from what appears to have, there it is right there.
Again, I'm looking from south to north, and it went into the one on the right.
That appeared to be at least a 727. We saw it a second ago. Here comes the videotape that we just showed you. You will see what appears to be a large plane. It could be a 727 right there, maybe even bigger, flying right into the side of the World Trade Center.
It was at least a 727. It was a jet. I couldn't believe my eyes watching it right above me.
And now you have to move from talk about a possible accident to talk about something deliberate that has happened here. We're going to immediately check with air traffic control in the area to find out if they had contact with either of these planes before the accident, but what we've just seen is about the most shocking videotape I've ever seen.
What are the odds of two separate planes hitting both towers?
Elliot, are you still there?
Hello?
Elliot?
Yes, I'm still here, Katie.
So, Elliot, what can you see right now from your perspective?
I don't face in that direction. I can't see anything personally.
It is completely impossible to understand why this is happening and to figure out what in the world is going on.
I think we have to be grateful
Ali
that the first
Eberhard
plane hit before 9 a.m., but it's now after 9 a.m., and I just wonder how many people were
A
in
lot of
those
those
offices.
buildings fill
Well,
up.
hopefully that they were evacuated following the first incident, and we can only hope that there was a very short period of time from when we first learned about this was probably about 8:50 Eastern time. This second incident occurred about 9:05. And so obviously that would be a short amount of time to get people out of the building. Ali Eberhard is another witness who is on the ground. Ali, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Please tell me what you're seeing.
Well, I live in Lower Manhattan. I face the north tower, the north side where the first plane crashed into the building. And right now, there's a lot of chaos on the ground, a lot of emergency vehicles. Everyone from the World Financial Center has exited and is walking north up to Battery Park North. There's just mass and mass of people walking north uptown of Manhattan. I was happened to look on the first tower, and I actually saw people waving where the first plane crashed through, and then it was unbelievable seeing this second jet come crashing into the second tower. What is going on?
And unfortunately, here in New York, many of our stations cannot see this, local stations, because the antennas are on the World Trade Center. They're backup towers on the Empire State Building, but television communication in New York City is probably pretty much knocked off the air.
I just want to say something. We're looking at a picture here where it appears, because of the angle, I think, that the towers are leaning, and I don't think that is actually the case, because after the first impact, it looked as if it was the right-hand tower was leaning. And now somebody is saying, we're getting a witness saying they are leaning actually right now, which will give you an idea of the type of impact we're talking about.
And that perhaps they're buckling under the force of the collision or the hole that's resulted from these two planes.
We're going to go to George Shea right now, who has also witnessed both or one of these collisions. George, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
What did you see, George?
Yeah, well, I was in a car driving up, just gotten out of the Battery Tunnel, driving north on West Street when an enormous explosion happened. And it was larger than a construction explosion. I looked out the window, and what appeared to be an enormous tire smashed into the ground, and I believe it hit the car to the right of me. And it was just so scary, and there was also a ton of debris fall. And I jumped out of the car and I ran south away from the building because I thought there would be further explosions.
And have you seen anyone injured on the ground, George?
A man next to me was actually hit by a piece of debris in his arm, and they said that someone had been badly hurt in a car ahead of me. I'm not certain if it was the car next to me, and I can't verify that. All I can say is that a lot of debris was falling. It was very confusing because everybody, I think, immediately assumed that a bomb had exploded, and that sort of had people thinking that further bombs may explode. So there was sort of a rush away.
Did you see, George, the second plane, that jet, fly into the other twin tower?
I heard two explosions, however. There was a first explosion that was louder, and then a second explosion, and but I could not see that, and I looked up, and when I looked up, I saw debris falling, and the tire, as I said, a very large tire.
Well, of course, this is, as we've said, completely shocking video and a shocking turn of events, and we've been talking here that the first incident, one might surmise that it was some kind of accident, and then to have a second, what appeared to be 727 jet, of course, the question of terrorist activity has to surface, and the question of whether this was an intentional terrorist act of some kind.
You know, keep in mind that we're in an area here where there are three major airports. You have Newark Airport, Kennedy Airport, and LaGuardia Airport, all within several miles of the World Trade Center. You know, it's very unusual for a plane to get into this area without being completely tracked or identified by air traffic control. So you would have to imagine that, A, if this plane were headed right for the World Trade Center, there must have been someone trying to talk or communicate with that pilot, and for it to fly right into the side of the building.
Well, the smaller plane you can understand almost, but a jumbo jet, a large jet, completely.
Let's re-rack that video, if we could, down in the control room where we actually saw the jet flying into the building,
and
which
I was mistaken. When Elliot Walker said it was a big plane, I was looking in the distance and saw a small plane, which might have been a helicopter, actually. To see this plane come into the picture,
there it is.
That is a big plane. And, I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's a 737, we're now being told, and flying directly into the midsection of what would be the eastern tower of the World Trade Center.
I'm wondering if Jennifer Oberstein is still on the phone. Do we still have Jennifer on the phone? She's actually not on the phone because she was near a police officer. At least we could have perhaps gotten more information from that officer. Needless to say, it's pandemonium, I am sure, down there, and we gathered that from even the eyewitnesses with whom we spoke, and how terrifying this was for them to see. And you can only imagine, as you get closer to the Twin Towers, a New York landmark, what the scene must be like there.
You know, you talked about the buildings looking like they're buckled. They're designed to have a 2-degree sway in either direction because of the height of the building and to be able to deal with wind and stress, but something like that is more than it's probably designed for.
We want to go now out to Jane Daranowski, who I understand is a television producer here in New York. Jane, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm down here near the World Trade Center. I was walking down 6th Avenue this morning at 8:42 a.m. A group of us saw a plane veer through the buildings. Then we saw a huge cloud of smoke, and then fire came out of one of the towers. Here, it's near the upper floor, as you can probably see with your chopper shots. And then about 10 minutes ago, a second explosion in the second tower. Lower down, that was not affected by the plane, so I'm not quite sure what happened there. but right now there's a huge gaping hole in one of the towers, and the other building is on fire. The scene down here is incredible. People are out of their office buildings, watching, crying, taking pictures. I've never seen anything like it down here.
Jane, you said you saw the first plane. Did you get a glimpse of what kind of plane that was? We were told it was a small commuter plane.
Well, it wasn't a Cessna or anything like that. It was a larger plane, a mid-sized plane, and we could hear it very low. And walking down the street, a couple of us looked at each other, thinking, what's happening? Then it veered drastically on its side through the buildings and then went into the upper floors of the World Trade Center tower.
And we want to just mention that when the impact hit the first tower, you would hope that people who were in the second tower were beginning to evacuate, especially if air traffic control had some indication that this was deliberate. You'd hope that they were starting to get people out of the other tower before this second plane hit that tower.
But if you've tried to go up, we've been upstairs in the towers of in the restaurant up there to try to get down.
I mean, the elevators would have been jammed, no question, but if there was an indication that this was deliberate in the first case, you'd hope that they would immediately begin evacuation in the second tower.
We've got another eyewitness that we'd like to speak with. Dan Dietrich is on the phone. Dan, tell me where you are and what you're seeing or what you saw.
Okay, what I saw was one plane coming in low from the north down over 7th Avenue. It crashed into the top or the middle of one of the towers. 10 minutes later, I saw another plane crash into the other side of the tower at a lower level. It looked to me a small, commercial plane, the first plane that I saw. It crashed into the top of the tower, and there was a huge fireball, and there was a gaping hole in the side of the tower. As we were waiting outside and looking at it, another plane came in low, I believe from the other side, and hit the middle of the other tower. So I saw both planes, two separate planes, crash into each tower.
And Dan, and again, the size of the planes, tell me about that.
I would say that the plane was a mid-size, looked to be a commercial airline. I don't know. I thought perhaps, a commercial airline, a mid-size, not a jumbo jet.
This, of course, is unconfirmed, but we are getting information from an employee of United Airlines. And again, we want to emphasize this is unconfirmed, but there is speculation that an American Airlines plane was hijacked and crashed on purpose into the World Trade Center, and that the second plane was another plane, perhaps hijacked, was then flown in to the second tower. Dan, tell me about people on the ground. Are you at a vantage point where you can see what's happening on the ground?
I'm farther up in the West Village. I'm not on the ground near the base of the towers.
Where were you when it actually happened?
I was walking down 7th Avenue south at about Charles Street, which is about 15 or 20 blocks north of the towers.
Well, obviously, this was a shocking thing for you to witness on this Tuesday morning, where some wires just came out and said in 1945, an Army Air Corps B-25, a twin-engine bomber, crashed into the 79th floor of the Empire State Building. That occurred in dense fog. This was a crystal clear day in Manhattan. So it is completely unclear how there would be any kind of problems with visibility. Dan, thank you so much for talking with us. Hopefully you can stay on the phone and we can check back in with you at another point in time. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We want to also remind people that the World Trade Center bombing that took place on February 26th back in 1993, the product of a terrorist attack, the result of a terrorist attack that killed 6 people and injured more than 1,000. Of course, that happened on a Friday afternoon. I think, Matt, you and Al were working that day.
We were.
I know I was at home in Virginia watching it in disbelief, and now it feels a bit like deja vu. But of course, this is so much more bizarre.
Yeah,
Miranda
no question, and you keep in mind that that killed 6 people, injured 1,000, and the explosion happened in a garage in the basement. This was a direct hit on the midsection or upper section of the tower, so the potential for injuries and death much larger. Of course, also some people on the planes.
Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. If they were hijacked and they were en route to a different destination,
right.
Of course, this story continues to unfold. Bob Kerr joins us now. Bob, where are you and what can you tell us?
Katie, good morning. I'm on the north lawn at the White House, and the first thing we looked for here in light of what's happened is whether there is any unusual activity out here, whether there's an unusual police or Secret Service presence, people on the roof, that sort of thing. We don't see that as we speak. I did try to call the National Security Office here. As you know, the president is out of town. He is in Florida. We're told he has been informed of this. I can tell you that the White House National Security staff that remains here is in a senior level meeting, and we're hoping to hear from them as soon as possible. But Katie, the reaction here to the pictures you're seeing and to the initial pictures when they came up, even in what's called the lower press office here at the White House, was one of shock. I mean, people are just standing around television monitors looking at this. And when I say people, I don't mean just the reporters. I mean the people who are actually in the office who work here at the White House.
So very little information is coming out of the White House at this juncture, but needless to say, if the speculation is true about some kind of terrorist event, this will be a major, major crisis for the Bush administration. Jim Miklashevsky is at the Pentagon now. Mick, are you hearing any more information from there?
Well, according to U.S. intelligence officials, Katie, there appeared, at least to their knowledge, to be no specific threat involving hijacking airliners or any attacks on buildings in the New York area. U.S. intelligence officials report this morning that there are, they constantly are hearing about threats, possible terrorist threats against American targets worldwide. But as far as they know this morning, they had no early indications that anything of this nature could have occurred. Pentagon officials are already calling this a terrorist attack. They say that they have not yet ordered the scrambling of any military jets. If National Guard were to be scrambled in that area, that would be at the order of the governor. Now, of course, the president does have the authority to scramble American military forces in defense, but there's a problem here. What now do you defend against exactly? If you put warplanes in the air, there's always a danger that they could misidentify a pilot's intention.
Susan?
Although I believe, according to officials here,
I just wanted to tell you guys, if you want to continue,
are now off limits and restricted. But so far, the U.S. military and Pentagon officials are scrambling to get as much information as they possibly can to determine what course of action, if any, the U.S. military would take.
But Mick, they are describing this as a terrorist attack right now.
There are some officials here in the Pentagon who are calling this an obvious terrorist attack based on very preliminary information. The information that intelligence officials are getting in terms of a possible hijacked plane, and of course the very horrifying video of the plane veering into the tower itself is a clear indication to everyone here that this is not an accident.
All right, Jim Miklashevsky, thanks. And of course, the coordination that took place to have 2 planes hit the towers within 18 minutes of one another. Let's go back to the White House now. Bob Kerr is still standing by there. Bob, what can you tell us?
Well, Matt, it was interesting to listen to Jim Miklashevsky there from the Pentagon. Of course, the president has the authority to scramble military forces, and this is a case, obviously, in which retaliation, if indeed it proves to be a terrorist incident, will be contemplated. But the usual course of events is it's an investigation. You know, unless someone steps forward, claims responsibility, the White House and other arms of the U.S. government will say, we have to determine who is responsible for this attack, try to pinpoint it, and then the U.S. usually says someone is going to be made to pay. But that is a big if we can determine exactly the origin of this terrorist attack. And so there are some implications to that.
Let's go back to Jim Miklashevsky. Bob, thank you, at the Pentagon. Mick, you have more information?
Well, Katie, Bob's exactly right, but what the primary concern right now is protecting the American public in the New York area right now against any possible further attacks by the air. They have no indications there will be, but there is some concern that since this appeared to be such a highly coordinated attack, that there may be other terrorist attacks that could be planned either in New York or elsewhere. This is absolutely the worst case scenario for the counter-terrorist planners because apparently, according to intelligence officials, there were no firm indications prior to this that anything like this could have happened. But in terms of scrambling the U.S. military, it would be for protection for the time being and not necessarily even thinking right now about any kind of retaliation.
All right, David Gregory is now on the phone from Longboat Key, actually, where
he's following the president.
That's right. David?
Yes, Katie, the president is about to begin an education event, which is obviously being canceled. The event will go forward insofar as the president, we expect momentarily, will come out and make a statement about this. He was made aware en route from his hotel to this school here in Sarasota where he was going to talk about education. He'll make a statement, then we're told by White House officials that he will quickly depart for Washington.
We should mention, David, that New York City Airport or New York area airports have all been closed. The Lincoln Tunnel has been closed here in New York. While we're getting ready to listen to the president, let's go back to Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon. Jim, you talk about counter-terrorist measures that are in place. Can you shed any light for us on what kind of things are in place in the event of an attack of this nature?
Well, Katie, it's very difficult for the U.S. military to respond to this kind of thing right now because it's unclear exactly who's behind it and if there are any other potential attacks or incidents like this, because this has obviously not been officially declared a terrorist attack. But all the experts who are looking at these pictures say there's no doubt about it. This was a coordinated terrorist attack. But who and why is very much unclear right now. And the problem with trying to then put planes in the air to try to prevent any further attacks is these are, after all, open airspaces for the most part. And it's difficult for the U.S. military to simply scramble jets and put them in the air. And then, according to officials here, then do what? This area, of course, according to officials here, is obviously going to be declared off limits in terms of any air traffic. But right now, officials here at the Pentagon are simply scrambling to find out first what happened and what potential reaction the U.S. military could provide in terms of protection. Possible further protection against any further potential attacks.
And Mick, it's important to note that if these planes were hijacked, if they were carrying passengers, there isn't much that military officials could have done. You can't shoot down a plane like that for risk of the people on board, plus for the injuries you could cause on the ground in a place like Manhattan. Go ahead.
That's exactly right. And the president, as we said earlier, does in fact have the authority to scramble the military to put them up in some kind of force protection mode. The governor has the Air National Guard at his disposal. He can do that. But again, officials are pretty much wondering exactly what to do in terms of protection and how. Again, to the terrorist officials, this is absolutely the worst case scenario because there right now seems to be not much they can do in terms of the aftermath.
Mick, obviously, yeah, we're scrambling for information here. I would just want to read this Reuters wire that says 2 planes crashed into the towers of the World Trade Center on Tuesday morning, causing huge explosions and killing at least 6 people. CNBC TV said there were at least 1,000 injured. Both towers of the Lower Manhattan landmark, where thousands of people work, were the scenes of a bombing in 1993. The FBI told the Associated Press that it was, quote, foul play and not an accident. A person who answered the phone, that was reported by ABC, a person who answered the phone on the trading floor at interdealer broker Cantor Fitzgerald, located near the top of the World Trade Center, said, were blanking dying when asked what was happening and hung up. There was screaming and yelling in the background, and a follow-up call was not answered. Nick Fulton, an eyewitness, said just before the first explosion he saw a plane fly over his apartment in the Soho district of Lower Manhattan. Jamie Gangel is on the telephone, our national correspondent, with more information. Jamie, what can you tell us?
Katie, I've just spoken to top U.S. officials with the access to latest intelligence, and they said, quote, that this was clearly terrorist-related, no question about it. They said that they couldn't give any further details now, not because they didn't want to share it, but because they just don't know yet. They're at the earliest stages.
So do they know, Jamie, for example, if a plane was in fact hijacked?
They would not answer that, and I think that it's because I think that they just are getting the earliest details and they're afraid of putting out misinformation. But they said, you know, that it was clearly terrorist-related.
All right, Jamie, thanks. We're looking again, if you're just joining us, as both towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, where two planes have crashed into the towers, one shortly before 9 o'clock Eastern Time, one shortly after 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And as you can see, the tower on the left was hit just above the midsection point. They're both 110 floors high, 1,300 feet above the ground. The tower on the right was hit more, probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the way up the tower, but you can see fires burning in both towers. We actually saw a videotape. We watched the second tape, or the second plane hit the building. You'll watch it enter from the right portion of the screen and then make contact with the left-hand tower in what is shocking video. And here it comes right there. And you can see the impact on one side of the building and the residual damage coming out of another side of the building. And one can only imagine that that one occurred shortly after 9 o'clock in the morning. How many people were in the building at the time of the impact? And it's a large plane. We're told it was either a 737. Some reports that the first plane was a 757.
Some kind of Airbus. That was what the United worker told us. That apparently that it was an American Airlines plane that had been hijacked from Boston to Los Angeles, but we're just getting initial reports of that. And again, we must tell you that we're trying to get as much information, but it is trickling in at a very slow pace. So all of this is unconfirmed, and of course speculation of a terrorist attack is unconfirmed, although that is what some Pentagon officials are saying. Let's go to President Bush right now.
Unfortunately, we'll be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary of Rod Page and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today, we've had a national tragedy. Two airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
No. That, of course, was President Bush, who is in Florida, in Longboat Key. He was speaking at an elementary school. He had planned to be talking about literacy. Obviously, he had to change. He mentioned that this is an apparent terrorist attack. He is traveling back to Washington. He said that he had spoken to the governor of New York as well as the vice president, that all the resources will be brought to bear by the federal government to determine who did this and who was responsible for this terrible, terrible event. And then, of course, it was followed by a moment of silence for the victims.
We're going to go to Andrea Mitchell now, who has more information on this tragedy. Andrea?
Matt and Katie, I've spoken to a top U.S. official who says that early reports to our intelligence community and to other officials within the administration are that this was a hijacked American Airlines plane en route from Boston to Los Angeles. One of the two planes, they say, was apparently a hijacked American Airlines plane. They caution that early reports still need further confirmation, but this is at least what the U.S. government is being told by American Airlines officials, apparently. They are assuming and have obviously informed the president that this is a terror attack.
And Andrea, we have no information as to in what term of the flight this plane was taken over, how much warning that air traffic controllers may have had that someone hostile was at the controls of this plane?
Exactly right. They had no other information, just that at least one of the two planes was hijacked from Boston en route to Los Angeles, presumably after it had already been in the air and en route, because I was told en route to Los Angeles. So probably hijacked after it had taken off. As you know, those are very short flights. Those are usually 737s or 757s on that route. But this clearly, according to the U.S. government, is a terror attack, as you heard the president say. Now, one of the things, Matt and Katie, we should understand is that there was no specific threat that the U.S. government is aware of, no specific terror alert other than the worldwide caution that had been reissued in recent days because of the strife in the Middle East, because of concerns over terrorists. Of course, the best known is Osama bin Laden, but no alert coming from his organization. And as far as they know, as of this morning, as of this minute, he is in Afghanistan.
But as we should mention, Andrea, it appears that this was a well-coordinated bombing or terrorist act because of the fact that two planes were used, both substantial in size, and the fact that they both hit the World Trade Center within 18 minutes of one another. Obviously, a lot of planning went into this attack. Let's go to NBC's Jim Miklaszewski at the Pentagon now. Mick, what can you tell us?
Matt, to add to what Andrea Mitchell just said, senior military officials here at the Pentagon are saying they are getting information that the American Airlines Flight 11, after it left Boston apparently, was hijacked and was diverted, apparently the early information was being diverted to JFK for some reason. And then, obviously, nobody knows exactly who was at the controls of the plane, but it broke off its route from to Los Angeles and was headed toward JFK. That was the initial information that officials had received when obviously it did not go to JFK, but veered off and headed toward the World Trade Center. But again, no indication as to who may be responsible or who was at the controls of that plane when it rammed into the World Trade Center. Matt.
Mick, thank you. We're going to be obviously talking with you throughout the morning, but right now we want to talk with Larry Johnson, a terrorism expert, in fact, the former Deputy Director of the State Department's Office on Counterterrorism. Mr. Johnson, can you please put this into some kind of perspective for us and give us your insight on what might have happened here?
Well, first we need to be cautious before jumping to the conclusion that it's necessarily terrorism. I mean, I would be inclined, based upon the preliminary reports we've seen, to say that that's the case. But there's always the possibility that you may find out after the fact that this was some suicide pact for some reason that had nothing to do with politics. That said, this is a first. Back in 1992, there was 93, there was a Lufthansa plane hijacked from Germany, and it ended up landing in New York. And one of the concerns we had at that time was the possibility of that plane, under the control of a hijacker, flying it into one of the buildings. My concern now is that there's always we ignore terrorism. We talk a lot about it, but we ignore taking very practical steps on security fronts until something like this happens, and then the pendulum swings out to an extreme. The next thing you hear people talking about putting surface-to-air missiles on top of buildings to prevent this kind of thing. This is a very rare event. It's unlikely to be repeated, but, and I think President Bush put his finger on it, we have to find who did this, and any country, any nation in the world that is in any way involved and responsible if it turns out to be terrorism will require a response from the United States, and the United States has got to be willing to pay that price.
Mr. Johnson, obviously we're completely stunned when about 25 minutes after the first explosion, or after the first plane crashed into one of the Twin Towers, another very large plane did the same thing. Right. And we've been talking with our correspondents all morning about sort of if another incident could happen on the heels of these two. What kind of measures are in place to prepare for something else that could conceivably happen?
Well, I think one of the steps is already being taken. I was at National Airport getting ready to fly to LaGuardia when this occurred. They have shut down air traffic going in and out of the cities. Now, apart from shutting down the air traffic, you're talking about an enormous disruption economically for the nation right now with the air traffic not going in, and people are they're gonna err on the side of caution. I think across the board you're going to look at the major hubs in the United States where there are large buildings: Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and there are going to be extra measures taken. One possibility is you could start putting up air cover and require that planes stay within a particular area and do not approach any closer. And if they approach, you would go to the extremes of having the U.S. Air Force intercept.
Larry, I wanted to ask you, all morning that correspondents have also been saying, particularly Bob Kerr and Jim Miklashevsky, that there was and Andrea Mitchell, no warning attached to this event. Right. Generally speaking, do we get some kind of, do U.S. officials, government agencies get some kind of warning from a particular group, or is this pretty, fairly typical in terms of an event happening without any foreshadowing?
No, Katie, this unfortunately is typical. It's only in the movies that you get the advanced warnings. You look at every major terrorist incident against the United States, whether you're talking Pan Am 103, the World Trade Center, the USS Cole bombing, the bombing in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
Rarely do you get an advance notice.
Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Jim Miklashevsky has some new information at the Pentagon. I hope you'll stand by and continue to talk with us. Mick?
Katie, I don't want to alarm anybody right now, but apparently it felt just a few moments ago like there was an explosion of some kind here at the Pentagon. We're on the E-ring of the Pentagon. We have a window that faces out toward the Potomac, toward the Kennedy Center. We haven't been able to see or hear anything after the initial blast. I just stepped out in the hallway. Security guards were herding people out of the building, and I saw just a moment ago as I looked outside, a number of construction workers who have been working here have taken flight. They're running as far away from the building as they can right now. I hear no sirens going off in the building. I see no smoke. But the building shook for just a couple of seconds. The windows rattled, and security personnel are doing what they can momentarily to clear this part of the building. Again, I have no idea whether it was part of the construction work, whether it was an accident, or what is going on. We're going to try to find those details and get them to you as soon as possible. But interestingly enough, one intelligence official here in the building said when he saw what appeared to be the coordinated attack on the World Trade Center, his advice was to stay away from the outside of the building today, just in case. Now, again, nobody has any indications of exactly what happened, but it appears that there has been some kind of, it felt like a small blast of some kind. Again, the window shook. The building shook, the windows rattled, and people, if I'm looking out the window now, and the construction workers are still keeping a good, the construction workers are still keeping a distance. That's all I can see, and I see no other extracurricular security activity right outside. But to get more information, I'm going to have to break away and walk down the hallway and see what it is exactly that happened here just a few moments ago.
Mick, see what you can find out. Please be careful and let us know what's going on there. Meanwhile, we're going to go back to David Gregory, who is in Longboat Key, Florida, where President Bush was earlier this morning for an event on literacy. He was going to a school to talk with kids. David, what can you tell us?
A little bit more about how all of this unfolded and what the president is going to do next. The president declared this an apparent terrorist act. He offered a prayer for the families, promised to hunt down, in his words, the people responsible for this. He will now travel back to Washington, and aides are telling us now that he will immediately convene a national security meeting to see what steps are taken next.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're looking at live pictures of the Pentagon where there is billowing smoke. Jim Miklashevsky just reported that he heard an explosion, and right now we're looking at an aerial view of the Pentagon. Mick, can you talk to us?
Officially, nobody knows exactly what happened. I think the picture is pretty clear. According to one U.S. Army officer who went running past me at a full trot, he said that it appears that a bomb was detonated at the heliport. The heliport is a helicopter landing area right next to the Pentagon, just adjacent to the E-ring. The offices nearest the heliport area are U.S. Army, Reserve officers, and the Army Reserve our offices are located there. But as you can see, it appears to be a pretty significant blast. To give you some perspective, we are almost on the opposite side of the building, the world's largest office building. And as I reported to you, we could feel the building shake and the windows rattle. And as I was in the hallway just a few moments ago, I could smell an acrid kind of smoke, the kind of almost what you'd smell when a fluorescent light goes bad, that kind of ballast smell. And authorities are clearing the building. I don't know if you can hear the sirens outside right now, but it appears that in what I think people here in the building are already describing as a highly sophisticated, coordinated attack, not only against the World Trade Center, but against the Pentagon and U.S. military right here in Washington.
Tell me again, I worked at the Pentagon as well, and it is a huge building. I mean, it's miles and miles of offices. At what location did this seem to have detonated?
It's at the heliport. The heliport, which is as you sit in the Pentagon, you have the Potomac River and Washington, D.C. on one side, and the heliport is located almost exactly on the opposite side of the building, along one of the highways. Easily accessible, even though that they've increased security here significantly at the Pentagon within the past couple of years. That area...
I want to mention to you, Mick, that we are hearing, again, unconfirmed reports that this was the result of a plane crashing in the area as well.
I have no idea, Katie. All I know is that people who were in the building who came running from that part of the building thought it was a bomb of some kind. According to Chris Brown, my colleague who just came in, it appears that whatever it was, and perhaps it was a plane, Katie, if those are the initial reports, crashed into, or the damage is on the roof of the building at the heliport side of the Pentagon, which is just opposite of the Potomac River, as I just said.
We're looking at the White House, Mick, because we are learning that there have been some evacuations from the White House. I'm assuming that everyone is being evacuated from the Pentagon?
Well, nobody's given us the official word yet, but I think that's probably a safe bet. Thank goodness that was a helicopter that just flew by. I'm just a little nervous right now when you hear aircraft go past. But they have, in fact, evacuated that portion of the building. Usually they have sirens that go off in the building alerting you to the fact that it's time to get out. I haven't heard those yet, but just judging by the pictures, it's clear that that part of the building that is not damaged, at least, has been evacuated. Like I said, in the hallway, it was pandemonium. People were rushing from their offices, rushing outside.
And you're in your office at the Pentagon right now, Mick, reporting to us?
I am in the office, but I'm at the opposite side of where this crash occurred.
All right. Why don't you see if you can gather some more information? Please, again, be careful, Mick. And we're going to go to Matt, who's going to be talking with Jamie Gangel.
All right. Yeah. Katie, thank you very much. I'm joined by Tom Brokaw, and we'll try and recap what's been going on all morning here on the East Coast and in Washington, D.C. in just a few moments. But we do want to go right now to NBC's or today's national correspondent, Jamie Gangel, with some more information. Jamie?
Matt, I just want to tell you that U.S. intelligence sources are confirming the reports that one of the planes was a hijacked flight, an American flight from Boston to Los Angeles. They are also now looking into what's going on at the Pentagon. They don't have any details, but they have now put government buildings around the city of Washington on a heightened state of alert. I think part of that is happening formally, but obviously people are seeing what's going on, and some people are leaving buildings as well simply because of the concern following these latest reports from the Pentagon.
All right, Jamie, thank you very much. Again, joined by Tom Brokaw, and Katie's back with us now, too. Let's try and recap. It's 9:47 Eastern Time. Try and recap what's going on so far this morning, and the news is terrible. Just before 9 o'clock.
At 8:42, actually.
8:42, a plane crashed into the right-hand tower of the World Trade Center, somewhat about 3/4 of the way up. You can see the smoke billowing from that point of the building. And then about 18 or 20 minutes later, a second plane, a large plane, we saw it actually on tape, hit the left-hand tower of the World Trade Center about halfway up. An enormous fireball on several sides of the building. People trying to be evacuated. There's the tape of the second plane hitting right there, even as people were trying to get out of the first building. We have confirmed reports now that there was one plane hijacked, American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. And that is apparently one of the planes used in this crash, Tony.
Matt, there's a report on Dubai television that, in fact, the group claiming responsibility is the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. This comes, ironically, on a day when the Israeli Foreign Minister, Shimon Peres, is scheduled to meet with Yasser Arafat. Of course, we've had the meeting in South Africa for the past several days, in which the Palestinians were accusing the Israelis of racism. The United States vacated that meeting, but there hasn't been one specific incident.
And the Israelis vacated that meeting as well.
And the Israelis vacated it as well, but there has not been one specific incident. It's also worth pointing out that terrorism also always has two prongs to it, the physical threat and now the psychological threat. This does seem to be surreal, but in fact it is real when you have an explosion of undetermined origin at the Pentagon, the most conspicuous symbol of American capitalism, the Twin Trade Towers here in New York, two deliberate attacks on those towers today, and we do not know for sure who is responsible.
And the Capitol, by the way, the U.S. Capitol has been evacuated. There have been evacuations taking place at the White House. Needless to say, many people in the Pentagon have left that building as well.
Airports
and here,
in New
by
York.
the way, in this building in Midtown New York, they have asked a lot of people at 30 Rockefeller Plaza to leave. It's another high-rise Capitol building, which is in New York. I came down the length of Manhattan, and a lot of people were simply unaware of what had happened as you tuned in the radio, and then they began to get it. It's election day here in New York.
Primary day.
And what we have is something that most Americans thought could never occur.
As Larry Johnson, a terrorist expert I just spoke with a few moments ago, the former deputy director of the State Department Office on Counterterrorism, claimed this is a first, that he had never heard or seen anything like it. He talked about back in 1993 a German plane being hijacked, and there were fears when it was flown to New York that it might be crashed into something.
Now, we have this as a major development. The Federal Aviation Administration has shut down all air traffic nationwide. This country has been immobilized by these terrorist attacks in terms of air travel today, and we don't know where it goes from here. We'll just ask that you stay with us so that as we get hard information, we can share that with you. There's going to be a lot of speculation. The president has described this apparently as a terrorist attack. The FBI has confirmed that an American Airlines flight, Boston to Los Angeles, was hijacked. It's believed that that was the first plane that went into the Twin Trade Towers.
Let's go to James Kallstrom, Tom, if we could, the former director of the FBI here in New York. Mr. Kallstrom, I'm sure you've never seen anything like this. Do you have any information that might be helpful to us?
Well, not particular information on this tragedy, but certainly what an incredible tragedy. And, you know, all of us in law enforcement and prior in law enforcement have talked for years, and the public has seen the hatred in the world. They've seen the bombing of the World Trade Center. They saw the conspiracy to blow up the tunnels in the United Nations and the FBI building back in the 90s. They've seen the bomb at the USS Cole and the bombings of our embassies in Africa. So, I mean, we've known for some time now that this hatred exists. And And now it looks like that it's culminated in this absolutely horrendous, incredible act against the United States.
Jim, as someone who's
Washington today.
I'm sorry, as someone who's investigated some of these crimes in the past, and when we think back to 1993 and the World Trade Center bombing and what it took in terms of coordination and planning to pull off that one bomb in the World Trade Center, can you even speculate as to what it might take to coordinate this, what we think so far is a three-pronged attack this morning?
Matt, it obviously took a lot of coordination. There's a lot of groups in the world that have the ability to coordinate these types of attacks. As you know, and most people should know, the United States is an open society. I mean, we've talked for years about the downside of having our borders basically open, and any given day people fly into our airports undocumented and turned into the population. They're not certainly all terrorism. They're not terrorists, but I mean, we live in a free society, and I'm not espousing we change that, but it's very, very difficult for the FBI and law enforcement to keep track of this when we live in the society that we live in.
Jim, if you can stand by for just a moment, because Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon has some more information for us. Mick?
Katie, my colleague Chris Brown here at the Pentagon encountered some of those who survived, whatever it was, whether it was a bomb or an airplane crashing into the Pentagon. One of the survivors who was reportedly injured, had various lacerations, was on the second floor of the D ring. That is one ring inside the outer ring of the Pentagon, when suddenly there was this horrific blast, and he said that the second floor buckled upward, and then the third floor above him actually collapsed downward. The scene on the other side of the building, as it's being described to us, there are people being removed on stretchers. Security forces are evacuating the building right now, and according to the officials here at the Pentagon, they still don't know exactly what it was, but as you reported, Katie, eyewitnesses reported that, in fact, it was a plane that crashed into the Pentagon.
And Mick, any idea, I wasn't quite sure if you said this, about the number of people who might have been hurt or worse in this?
No idea at all, Katie. As you know, having worked here on any given day, this is a small city, 25 to 30,000 people may be working here at any one time. That portion of the Pentagon, by the way, had just been remodeled and just reopened. If the crash had occurred just a few months ago, that section of the Pentagon would have been virtually empty. But at this time of day, early morning or mid-morning, the Pentagon's very busy. It's impossible to say how many casualties there may be. But there have been a large number of people cited being removed on stretchers. And again, as one survivor said, the floor just buckled up under him, and the roof caved in on him.
All right, Mick, thank you very much. We want to move a couple of miles away from you right now to the White House, where Bob Kerr is standing by. And Bob, we understand that building has now been evacuated?
Matt, that's true. It is utterly surreal. As soon as word came of the Pentagon incident, we were rather forcefully removed from the White House. The scene was one of administrators, cooks, whatever, running at fairly high speed all the way out of the building through the top gates. Then we huddled for a while in Lafayette Park across the street, and we've been moved now from there a block or so away. The offices along Jackson Place, which are across the street from the White House and adjacent to Lafayette Park, also have been evacuated. And in the most surreal of this morning's scenes here at the White House, a white plane, a very big jet, was flying an unusual pattern near the White House over Lafayette Park very slowly. It made one circle, and then we have not seen it since. There was a lot of concern about what that plane might be, but again, it's only speculation, but most people say that since flights have been cleared from U.S. airspace and it was a totally white plane, looked unusual to all of us, that it was a government plane of some kind.
We should point out that we're looking at pictures, Bob, as you speak, of the World Trade Center, because all of the camera crews have been evacuated from the White House as well. When do you expect President Bush to arrive there, Bob?
Well, Katie, he's coming back directly, and you figure it's about a 2-hour flight, so you can do the math. The reason I said that it was so surreal was that within just about 20 minutes ago, they were still conducting tours. You had hordes of tourists and others still in the White House on tour, lining up outside to get in. There seemed to be absolutely no unusual activity outside the White House until word came of the incident at the Pentagon. So it's been quite a dramatic shift here.
You know, in terms of responsibility, Tom and Matt and Bob, apparently a senior official from the Radical Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine denied on Tuesday the group had any connection to the plane crash. An anonymous caller had told television that it was behind the crash, but, quote, "I emphasize that the story released on television by an anonymous person is totally incorrect." Tassir Khaled, a senior official from the DFLP Politburo in the Palestinian territories, told Reuters. The DFLP is against hijacking planes and against endangering the lives of civilians who are not connected with the struggle of this region, he said.
There are going to be a lot of claims and counterclaims in the course of the next 24 hours or so. This is a task for investigators of extraordinary magnitude to try to determine who did this and how they got away with it. You think about an American Airlines flight that was on its way from Boston to Los Angeles, was hijacked in midair. They're now citing transmissions from the plane, so they have hard evidence of that, and then brought down here and made to fly into the Twin Trade Towers. Did one of the hijackers get control? Did they shoot the pilot? It boggles the mind beyond our ability to figure out what was going on.
You talk about transmissions. I was just curious, have you had any evidence of what was said during those
They're just saying they're citing transmission to know that the plane had been hijacked. That's all that they're saying about it at this point. We also ought to remind everyone, once again, this is an exceptional development. The FAA has banned all takeoffs at all airports across America. This country, in terms of air travel, has been immobilized. A good portion of the nation's capital, the most powerful center in the world, has been immobilized as well as a result of these terrorist
attacks. And that's
attacks.
A very haunting description that Bob Kerr just gave of that low-flying aircraft near the White House, and one can only wonder if that was something that ultimately ended up in the Pentagon.
We just saw a live picture of what seemed to be a portion of the building falling away from the World Trade Center. If we can re-rack that to about 20 seconds ago, you'll see something dramatic happening. And I don't know whether it's another explosion or a portion of the building falling away, but something major just happened at that building. Here we go to the tape.
We have the tape.
And watch what happens in the left-hand tower. I don't know if this is the correct tape. There, something there is about to happen, falling away right there.
Yeah, it looks like a big chunk of it has just peeled away.
One can only hope that the area has been evacuated, but of course you wonder about all the emergency vehicles and the people who might have been injured early in the morning.
Well, you remember when the bomb went off in the basement of it in 1993, how much damage was done throughout that building, how much chaos there was at that time. These are two coordinated airplane attacks on the building on the upper reaches of it. That will have an enormous structural effect. Those buildings, I think that it's fair to say, will probably have to be brought down. It's too early to speculate on that, but there's been that kind of damage.
Let's talk again. You were talking about
here we have somebody actually
this is a reporter here in New York from WNBC. You talk about the fact this plane was taken from Boston on the way to Los Angeles. The reports are that it was being diverted to JFK. And just for people who aren't familiar with the geography of this area, the southern tip of Manhattan would be very much near the landing pattern for JFK Airport. It could have been easy for a hijacker to pretend that he was taking that plane to JFK and veer off at the last minute.
Yeah, I heard one eyewitness say that over Washington Square, which is in the lower reaches of Manhattan, he saw a plane go over at about 1,000 feet, apparently the American Airlines flight, and then do what he described as a sharp right turn right toward the World Trade Center. He then lost sight of it.
And one eyewitness here in this AP report says he was getting off a PATH train to the World Trade Center and saw bodies falling out of the building. as he approached it. Police told him to get out of the building immediately. He ran outside and watched people jump out of the first building, and then there was a second explosion.
This footage we're seeing right now shows that the damage is so severe. I mean, we had seen what seemed to be two fairly self-contained impact craters before, and now it appears something much more dramatic has happened to at least one of those towers.
These pictures are beyond belief.
We have a report that the second plane may have flown out of Newark, New Jersey. This is an official who was speaking on the condition of anonymity. Again, there is no confirmation of that. We just know that there were two planes that went in. The first one apparently was an American Airlines flight that was from Boston to Los Angeles. We're now seeing it from the harbor view of this continuing damage and destruction to the World Trade Center.
Incidentally, Tom, I just want to interrupt you for 2 seconds because apparently Jamie Gangel has some more information for us. Jamie?
Spoken again to U.S. officials with access to the highest intelligence, and they are now confirming that it does appear that at the Pentagon it was a plane. Again, they are saying they believe now a third plane was involved at the Pentagon.
And of course, this has been the nightmare, Katie, for national security officials for a long time. We talk about nuclear bombs and those kinds of exchanges or invasions, but everyone has been terribly worried about the suitcase-sized bomb of some kind, or an airplane, or an attack on our subways in the large cities. And this, obviously, no one had anticipated. 3 airplanes that were deliberately aimed at critical targets in America. We can only hope that it's over for today, but officials are taking no chances on all that. They're evacuating all critical buildings because, as Mr. Johnson said earlier, this is an open society. James Kallstrom from the FBI also pointing out that almost anyone can come in here. They have access to so many instruments that can be used as instruments of attack and terrorism, and that certainly has been the case today.
Let's go to our State Department correspondent, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, what can you tell us?
Well, this from the FBI. The State Department has been evacuated. There was a meeting going on in the Operations Center. Other top officials were in the Situation Room at the White House. Colin Powell is in Bogota, Colombia, on a 2-day trip. But this very interesting information, Katie, Matt, and Tom, from the FBI, they had been operating a massive exercise from their hostage rescue unit. All of their top teams, about 50 personnel, helicopters, equipment, were in Monterey, California for the last 2 days, scheduled to fly back today commercially. So all of those people are out of place. It's fair to say, according to sources that we've talked to here at NBC, that the FBI rescue operations and other FBI operations are really in chaos right now because they can't reach their officials in New York. All of their phone lines are down, and now you've got all of their special experts on this stuck in Monterey, California, trying to get a military flight back because there are no longer commercial flights. So they are seriously out of pocket, and there is a real breakdown of the FBI anti-terror coordination team, which is, of course, the principal team that would lead any effort and was so effective under Jim Kallstrom in New York City during the World Trade Center bombing and the TWA explosion, which, of course, turned out not to be terror.
Andrea, is the State Department taking this claim of responsibility from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine seriously? Are they giving any credence to that, or are they dismissing it, or how do they feel about who might have been responsible for this?
I think it is far too early for them, even the best experts in the government, to figure this out. They have one instant reaction, as you know, and it could be wrong, but their immediate reaction in a case like this would be to look toward Osama bin Laden and the collateral groups connected to him, simply because he has proved with the embassy bombings in Africa that he is the one terror leader who is capable of this kind of highly coordinated attack. The bombings went off in Tanzania and in Kenya almost simultaneously. It was extraordinarily well coordinated. They proved their case to a jury effectively and have managed to develop a great deal of information from sources from, in fact, turning some former members of his network.
Andrea,
so they believe, Tom, that he is the most likely person, but it's far too early to say anything.
We want to tell you that American Airlines has confirmed that one of its flights, American Airlines Flight number 11 from Boston's Logan Airport, scheduled to go to LAX. It left at 8 a.m. this morning. 45 minutes later, it was diverted into the World Trade Center. It was the airline that was involved. We can only assume on a popular flight like that it that probably had a capacity load of passengers and crew on board. There was a hijacking. That was the first plane that was involved. We don't know about the second plane yet, nor do we know the origins of a third plane that deliberately flew itself into the Pentagon this morning near the heliport. NBC Jim Miklashevsky now has been forced to evacuate that building, and so we'll have to wait till we hear from him.
Saw some pretty dramatic pictures from the Pentagon just moments ago, Matt.
Let's go back to a few seconds ago. This is now about an hour after the first impact. We saw some dramatic footage of a portion of one of the Twin Towers, actually it appearing to fall away from the rest of the building. Can we go to the tape now? Here we go, right here. This is, I mean, when you look at it, the building has collapsed. That tower just came down.
Let's go to Bob Bazell, who is at St. Vincent's Hospital. Bob, what's going on there? What can you tell us?
Katie, St. Vincent's Hospital is one of the hospitals that's closest to the World Trade Center. In the last few minutes, ambulances have been coming in one right after another. Most of the people they're bringing in have second and third degree burns, very serious burn victims. They say the smoke inhalation people will probably be the most serious, but they're not even close to getting to them yet. There's a triage operation that's going on in the area. Ambulances are being dispatched to every hospital in New York City. The entire staff of this hospital has come in from wherever they are, and it's true at hospitals across New York City. They're standing there. As soon as an ambulance pulls in, dozens of medical workers rush up to it. But it's a carnage that's just beginning. Everybody here, the emergency service workers I spoke to who have been down into the World Trade Center site, say this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's going to be massive amounts of casualties.
Bob, what are they telling you about people? Were there many people inside the building, or is it just too early to tell where the people were?
Well, there were certainly, probably hundreds, even thousands of people in the building, even though it was before 9 o'clock on the start of the usual work period, because it's just such a large area. So the number of casualties is just enormous, and they're just beginning to sort it out and just starting to get to the first few that they can get to. But the ambulances are just coming in. They're lined up. Every ambulance in New York City has been summoned. They're standing in a queue. They go in as soon as they can get a victim and bring them up here right away.
Bob, we're also looking at the lower end of Manhattan now as a result of the collapse of one World Trade Center. That whole financial district is now engulfed in smoke and debris, and there probably is going to be a lot more smoke inhalation problems as a result of what's going on.
Almost certainly, Tom. I was actually standing and saw that collapse, and everybody here just gasped, and even the medical workers and the ambulance attendants, when they saw that people who are used to tragedy, grabbed each other and hugged each other, and some started to cry.
And of course, one wonders about the triage unit.
Exactly, we're close to the base of that building trying to evacuate people, and when a building of that size falls, it does not fall in its own footprint.
No, absolutely. I'm several blocks north of there, so I don't know what that area looks like, but one can only imagine.
Well, the consequences go on, not just to the World Trade Center and to the poor people who were trapped and caught there, but of course that is the heart of the world financial markets, which have now been shut down effectively as well. So the ripple effect continues this morning as we all try to adjust psychologically and intellectually to what we are witnessing here. It is difficult to comprehend, but this country, the strongest country in the world, has been the target of a major coordinated terrorist attack. And the end is not over yet, even if it's confined to just these three targets. The ripple effect goes on. All air traffic has been shut down. There will be no financial markets in place today. Business has been stopped across the country.
And of course, who knows the human toll that will be the result of this action. Matt actually just pointed out to me on any given day, 50,000 people, Tom, work at the World Trade Center.
And at 8:45 in the morning, if they're not in the building, they're around the building. That's a beehive of activity down there. There is no more active area in terms of pedestrian traffic.
I hate to keep going back to the collapse of that tower, but if you consider that this plane hit at mid-structure and that would have probably taken out the electrical in the building where elevators wouldn't work and people struggling to get some way out of that tower, and it takes a long time to come down over 100 stories, and to think about the possible loss of life that just occurred by the collapse of that southeastern tower is just amazing. Minna Kathuria is with the Today Show, and she apparently saw the collapse of one of those towers. Minna?
Yes, hi, Matt.
Tell me what you saw.
We're on the corner of Duane and West Broadway, walking down towards the Twin Towers, and it just collapsed. It looked like it looked sort of like the building just demolished. Smoke clouds. I mean, smoke, clouds of smoke everywhere. People running towards me. I was going towards the Twin Towers. People were going away from the away from the towers, and it was just people running like I've never seen a scene like it.
Have you, from where you were, Minna, did you see many of the injured being treated? Is there any indication as the type of perimeter that the EMS people were dealing with?
No, I hadn't gotten that close yet. They were sort of blocking off the street. Now what they're doing is totally clearing out the area. And more emergency officials are coming in to help.
Can you just give me an idea of the reaction of people down there, Minna? Just pedestrians?
Everyone in tears. People who were. I met some woman who was in the building to the right of where the first thing happened, and just all crying, wondering if the people that they know in the buildings next door are okay.
Jamie, Minna, thank you very much. Minna, take care of yourself. Jamie Gangel, our national correspondent, is on the phone now with some more information. Jamie?
Katie, as you well know, buildings around town are being evacuated. The State Department has been evacuated. The White House has been evacuated. And the Pentagon has been evacuated. Intelligence officials tell me that they do believe at the Pentagon that was a third plane going down. They have had, the intelligence sources that I've talked to say that they have not received any claim of responsibility yet.
Jamie, have you gotten any information from Reagan National Airport as to air traffic in the area this morning, or anybody who might have somehow traced this plane or figured out from where it came or where it was going?
They still do not have any of those details yet. It is almost impossible. They were confused for a long time as to whether it's a bomb or a plane. They say now that it appears to be a plane, but they say that is all the information that they have. As you know, the FAA has shut down all aircraft now, and they are now going back and trying to sort that out. But they do not have any information on that yet.
Do they know what type of plane it might have been?
There is no, unfortunately, they just don't have that yet.
All right, Jamie. Thank you very much, Jamie. We'll be talking with you.
It goes without saying this is the most serious attack in the United States in more than 100 years. Not since the War of 1812, and certainly the damage that we did to ourselves during the Civil War has this country suffered this kind of damage within its interior. Obviously, Pearl Harbor, which triggered World War II, was a horrific event as well, but there has never been an event to match the magnitude of this one, in which everything has been shut down in terms of air traffic. The national capital has been immobilized. The White House, State Department, Pentagon has been attacked. The financial markets have been shut down. There's an untold loss of life here in Manhattan, the nerve center of America, to say nothing of what's going on at the Pentagon.
When's the last time? I mean, this is a shot of New York City and downtown Manhattan that many people can't remember.
It looks like
shot of one tower.
It looks like a movie, frankly, that this is unfolding, and it combines the horror of the TWA Flight 800 bombing and the Murrah Federal Building, because it's both of these incidents, of course, coming together in the most horrific way.
By now, I would guess that everyone is up across all the time zones in America. It's 7:15 in the West, obviously, but for those of you who are just joining us at 8:45 Eastern Time, 8:42 Eastern Time today, an American Airlines flight 11 from Boston to LAX was crashed into one of the World Trade Center buildings. 15 minutes later, another plane hit the other one. That building has now collapsed. Within an hour of those two attacks, the Pentagon was hit, now we're told, by a plane, an untold number of casualties there. President Bush has been on the air. He was in Florida at the time saying apparently this was a terrorist attack. Everyone now believes that, carefully coordinated from the air. And the consequences of it in terms of human loss and the effect on this country are still to be determined.
We want to go now, Tom, to Kathleen Zichi, who's with NYU Downtown Hospital. They've been treating some of the injured. Kathleen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you tell me about the injuries you're seeing and the numbers of people you've been treating?
We've seen a steady stream of patients for approximately an hour and a half. Many appeared to be superficial injuries, but I can't tell you that I've seen the most serious ones because I believe they're going in through the ambulance bay. So we have a very high level of activity here. Our first priority is on the care of those patients. And we do not have an exact tally at this time because of the level of activity at the hospital. We've also been responding to family members and friends who have come seeking information to the hospital.
And just quickly, Kathleen, how far is the hospital from the World Trade Center?
The hospital is perhaps a 5-minute walk from the World Trade Center, and we were the first responder when the Trade Center was attacked in '93, so unfortunately we have some prior experience.
Yeah. What kind of medical support is there downtown? How many hospitals in the immediate area there that could help with the injured?
We are the only hospital south of 13th Street in New York City, so we serve a very large proportion of the city. For that reason, our emergency room is a very high priority of this hospital, and the staff have been doing a heroic job in terms of responding to the patient.
Kathleen, what about the triage unit that is on the ground there? Are they NYU, a team of NYU medical people on the scene as well?
Yes, there are. I cannot respond to that question because I am not on the scene and I don't have that information.
But you do have medical people, your personnel there at the scene?
That is my understanding, yes.
Well, Katie, what we're worried about now is that the other building may come down. They've obviously evacuated that whole area as a result of the crash of one World Trade Center. Now I'm told that there's concern about the second one collapsing as well. Plainly, there's been an enormous amount of structural damage in the upper floors of all of that. And it is more than 100 stories high. It wouldn't take much to bring it down.
Kathleen, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're told now that spokesman for Yasser Arafat, the leader of the Palestinian, the leader of the PLA, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that he has, that Arafat has condemned what has happened here in New York. He says that the PLO has no role in it whatsoever. They're completely shocked and appalled by what is happening. There was just one earlier report that the Radical Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine claimed responsibility, but that was later denied as well. We don't know yet who is in fact responsible for this, but it was very carefully planned and coordinated, and fair to say it has been a devastatingly efficient and effective attack on the heart of this country.
And Pat Dawson is on the ground near the World Trade Center. Pat, are you there? Pat Dawson, can you hear me?
Apparently.
Okay, he's having some audio problems. We'll get to Pat in just a moment.
Just amazing. You have to stop and think about, you know, the hijacked plane and the terror of the passengers on board.
Oh.
As it could have been up to an hour that they realized something was dramatically wrong with this flight, and then thinking that perhaps they were going to John F. Kennedy Airport here in Queens, actually, and the plane suddenly veering into the World Trade Center tower.
Now you can only imagine.
What is striking to me is that we didn't have any early report of the the hijacking. You know, a lot of people monitor that air traffic talk that goes on, and it wasn't until this happened.
Well, the plane left Boston at 8 o'clock this
45
morning.
minutes later,
so
it went
it was about 42 minutes later that this occurred.
And it flew right over lower Manhattan. A number of people saw it at a very low altitude and then take this sharp right turn and wondered, according to eyewitnesses, what in the world was going on. Moments later, of course, the World Trade Center was hit. It was about an hour after that Jim Miklashevsky told you, Katie, that he'd felt an explosion at the Pentagon, and now we learn that there has been a plane that's been flown into the Pentagon. There have been people who have been hurt there, and we hope no one has been killed, but it seems likely that there were probably casualties of a serious magnitude there as well. The White House has been evacuated. The State Department is being evacuated.
Here's the Pentagon.
Here's the Pentagon now.
Pat Dawson, apparently, let's just take a quick look at the Pentagon, and as you can see, smoke continues to billow out of that structure. As Tom just mentioned, it's unclear how many people were hurt, and if in fact it was a plane. There is speculation that they believe it was a plane. Let's go to Pat Dawson, who is down by the World Trade Center. Pat, can you hear me?
Right down here, we cannot tell you much more in terms of specific information other than to say that there are probably at this stage, I would say, hundreds, perhaps in the thousands of emergency workers who in the last hour and a half have managed to work their way down here to lower Manhattan and basically try to get into this fray. We are standing right here about 10 to 12 blocks north of the World Trade Center. These firemen that you can see, firefighters are walking down towards the site now, and they literally have been arriving by the dozens over the past hour or so. As we say, probably in excess of 1,000 or more emergency workers from New York City and surrounding areas converging on this site now to try to make some sense of it. As you can imagine, at this point there is a certain level of chaos because they're just trying to sort out who's alive, who's not. We did speak to, as I said before, some of the emergency workers. They are police officers from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. That is the organization that has jurisdiction over those two buildings specifically, as well as bridges and tunnels. I spoke to two of them who were actually down there when that building collapsed. They said that they speculate that the loss of life had to be horrific, that there were not that many people down there on the streets at that point, that most of them who had been evacuated, that is civilians. But on the other hand, they said that there were literally hundreds of emergency workers who were down at that end. They have no idea the level of loss of life at this point. When I asked one of them why he was going back in as he suited up since he could barely breathe, he said, "It's my job, and there may be some of my brother officers in there. There may be other people in there." So those officers going in here, as you can see, all kinds of fire workers going in there, literally in the thousands now converging on this site. We cannot give you much of an organizational sense beyond telling you probably what you already know, which is that two separate aircraft have struck the two towers of the World Trade Center. If memory serves, I think each of those towers stands 110 stories. Some of the dust, as you can probably see now, is blowing in our faces. It just really depends on which way the wind blows as to whether or not we're enveloped in some of the dust and the smoke. As you can see from these pictures, the amount of dust from the fire that's still burning, flames and ash, is extraordinary at this point. And at least a few emergency workers have said that they really aren't so sure that other tower won't stay up now. They really didn't think the first one was capable of coming down, but it did. And so they're basically saying, keep back as far as you can. On the other hand, facing that danger, as we have been telling you, many, many hundreds of these workers are heading over those lines down towards that burning building to try to rescue those people who are in there, be they emergency workers, be they civilians. The original crash took place just about 8:45 by my reckoning. I don't know the exact time, but about 8:45. And when that took place, obviously at that hour the building would not be packed with people, but it's still late enough in the morning that there would be enough people.
We were listening to Pat Dawson, who's standing near the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. And Katie and Tom, I was thinking while Pat was talking, you both spent some time out at Oklahoma City at the Murrah Federal Building after that explosion. It took more than a week to sift through that rubble of a building that was how many stories? Probably...
It was about 30 stories, as I remember.
I'm sorry to interrupt you both, but apparently we've gotten a report that now a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department. Again, that's an initial report that I'm hearing from our producers in the control room. Can we go to anyone for more information on that? Apparently, no more information than that.
Where is Andrea Mitchell? Is she at the State Department?
Well, the State Department has been evacuated, as well as the White House. The U.S. Capitol has been evacuated. Obviously, the Pentagon has as well. We'll go to Mick. Mick, what is the latest from the Pentagon?
Katie, security officials here at the Pentagon have not only evacuated the building, but they're clearing the entire area. Security forces have reported that they have received information of another plane hijacking, that it's about 20 to 25 miles out of Washington, D.C., headed in this general direction. Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld a few moments ago was refusing to leave the building. We ran into the chief naval officer, the top naval officer, Admiral Vern Clark. They were loading him quickly into a car to take him to an alternative command site. Do you have me? They were taking Admiral Clark to an alternative command site. Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we do, Mick. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's no confirmation of this latest threat, but security officials here are taking it very seriously. We were standing with Secretary Rumsfeld's security detail, who, as soon as they got the report, went running into the building, and we were herded away. But they have set up an alternative command site somewhere in the area. The Pentagon has set up a crisis team to deal with this situation. But so far, the latest reports are that another plane of some kind may have been hijacked and headed in this direction. Katie?
Yeah, we also should tell you, Mick, this is Tom Brokaw, that the FAA now says that all international flights headed for the United States are being diverted to Canada. This at a time when, as Jim Miklashevsky is telling us, there's an unconfirmed report that there's been another hijacking. All takeoffs were stopped, but there were planes in the air, obviously, at the time of these first two attacks on the Twin Trade Towers and then on the Pentagon.
Andrea Mitchell is standing by with more information. She was at the State Department. Andrea?
The State Department, as you know, has been evacuated. Secretary of State Colin Powell is now en route home from Lima, Peru. He did not get to his destination of Bogota, Colombia today, so that trip canceled. He, as all other officials, heading back. State Department officials and the White House officials and the NSC have all been evacuated as well, although Condi Rice was earlier in the Situation Room. And CIA Director George Tenet has been holding meetings in his office in Langley, Virginia. And as we reported earlier, key FBI team members from their rescue efforts and anti-terror coordinating team were stranded in Monterey, California, where they were on a secret military exercise against exactly this kind of event.
Andrea, let me interrupt for a second. Can you tell us any more about reports we're getting that a car bomb has exploded outside the State Department?
I do not have confirmation of that.
All right.
They did evacuate the State Department, but we do not have confirmation at this moment about a car bomb outside the State Department. You know,
Andrea, thanks. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're going to go back to Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon. Mick?
I've got my eyes peeled here, Katie. I don't see anything, but security forces in the area have just blared out over their loudspeakers to any pedestrians who are anywhere near the Pentagon to take cover immediately. There was, as I said earlier, an indication that another plane may have been hijacked and headed in this general direction. So far, all we see are security helicopters circling the Pentagon. Again, the skies are crystal clear blue, and I can't see the speck of an airplane, but security forces here are obviously alarmed enough not only to tell people to keep some distance from the building, but to take immediate cover.
Can you tell me a little bit more? Well, actually, let's look at these live pictures at the World Trade Center. The other tower of the World Trade Center has just collapsed. You are looking at live pictures of the second twin tower at the World Trade Center collapsing as a result of the crash of an airplane into its side. That, I believe, was the first tower that was struck this morning at 8:42 Eastern Time.
You're not there.
That is now fallen to the ground and
The profile of
collapsed.
Manhattan has been changed. There's been a declaration of war by terrorists on the United States. There's nothing short of that.
Pat Dawson, excuse me, Tom, is down at the scene. Pat?
Where's Wing? Where's Wing? Where's Wing?
Pat, can you hear us? Obviously, there is pandemonium downtown. Pat is not far from the World Trade Center, as you can hear from the sirens, and you can only imagine the confusion and the terror that is in that area after not one but both Trade Center towers have now collapsed.
More than 100 stories of steel, concrete, electrical. Here it is. That's a videotape replay.
We are back at 10:30 Eastern Time on this Tuesday morning, this horrific, incredible, not to be believed Tuesday morning. You are looking at live pictures of the World Trade Center where just a few minutes ago, within the last minute actually, the second twin tower collapsed. Just to recap, if you're just joining us, around 8:42 Eastern Time this morning here in New York City, a plane crashed into the right twin tower of the World Trade Center about 2/3 of the way up the building, leaving a huge gaping hole, a huge fire. and tons of billowing smoke. About 25 minutes later, a second jet, believed to be a 727 or a 737,
some reports of a 757 even,
then crashed in the second twin tower. The first plane, incidentally, was en route from Boston, Massachusetts to Los Angeles.
Here's the video, I think, of the second plane striking the tower.
That's right. We're not sure the origin of that plane, is my understanding. The first plane that caused that hole on the right-hand side in the other twin tower was from Boston to LAX to Los Angeles. It was Flight 11, American Airlines. We have confirmed that that plane was hijacked. What happened following the hijacking is unclear. We should note that about an hour after the first collision at the Pentagon, reportedly another plane crashed into the Pentagon, which is just outside Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. All air traffic has been stopped.
Government buildings have been evacuated, as have other buildings across the country. The Sears Tower in Chicago was evacuated. You can imagine that other buildings in major cities and small cities around the country are probably being evacuated as well.
There's an unconfirmed report of a car bomb at the State Department. We haven't not been able to pin that down. There is also, Jim McLashevsky was told that there was an unconfirmed report of another air hijacking. We share this with you not in an attempt to in any way exacerbate what is already a terrible situation, but so much has come true today based on these early reports that we want you to have as much information as we can possibly get. At the Pentagon, all people outside were told to take cover just moments ago, but Jim McLashevsky said the skies were clear.
There was an unconfirmed report of another hijacking with a plane headed towards Washington. Again, we don't want to sound alarmist, but that is something that Mick heard while he was at the Pentagon. We also want to mention that the president is en route from Longboat Key, Florida, where he was there to visit an elementary school to talk about literacy. Obviously, clearly, his agenda has changed dramatically. He will convene a meeting of the National Security Council as soon as he gets home. Colin Powell is also on his way back from Lima, Peru. He was scheduled to be in Bogota, Colombia.
And probably not at the White House. They'll probably take him to a safe location. There are a number of them, some in the hills of Virginia, as you know. And my guess is that Air Force One is in the unusual situation of having a fighter plane escort on its way back from Florida today. That's where we stand.
Think about the loss of life that we could have seen this morning. If you think about the fact that when full, the World Trade Centers hold about 50,000 people, no telling how many people were at work before 9 o'clock this morning and then shortly after 9 o'clock in the other tower. But if you look at this picture here, Tom and Katie, at Lower Manhattan, it appears that terrorists have succeeded this time in doing what terrorists tried to do back in 1993.
This is war. This is a declaration and an execution of an attack on the United States, two of our most conspicuous symbols of the American system of capitalism. The Pentagon, which of course is the headquarters of the most mighty military in the world, was attacked today as well. The White House has been evacuated. The State Department has been evacuated. Financial markets have been immobilized. All flights taking off after these attacks were grounded.
International flights have been sent to Canada.
It turns out it's transatlantic flights only going to Canada now. So there has been great chaos visited upon this country, to say nothing, as you pointed out, Matt, so importantly, of the still untold loss of life, and it's going to be horrendous. We don't know yet what the exact numbers are, but we can only tell you by looking at those pictures that you can guess as well as that we can, that there are going to be a lot of people who are not going to be able to escape that.
Back in 1993, when the bomb blew up in the basement of the World Trade Center, so many survivors talked about how long it took them, with no power in the elevators, to walk down the smoke-filled stairways. And you think about how many people were still trying to escape those buildings when first one and then the second tower collapsed.
And of course, the triage unit that has been set up. Area hospitals are all receiving victims. And as Matt said, 50,000 capacity when everybody is in the building. But many people at 8:42 a.m. here in New York are at their desks, working in their offices. One young man or one man was reached by phone and was asked, what is happening there? And he said, we are blanking dying here. And there was screaming and yelling and pure chaos, understandably, going on in the background.
There's a picture of Lower Manhattan, ladies and gentlemen, the most important city in the world in so many ways. And now it has been attacked by terrorists at the World Trade Center, and the damage is beyond our ability to tell you in great detail.
Let me mention that,
I was going to say, here's what the president said. He canceled an education appearance in Florida. Here's what he said just a short time ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a difficult moment for America. I, unfortunately, will be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary Rod Page and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence.
That was George W. Bush about an hour ago speaking from Longboat Key, Florida. He is en route to Washington, D.C. We're looking at some pictures on the ground, or we were, of apparently some of the victims. Let's go to Pat Dawson if he can hear us. He is on the ground.
Quite extraordinary. These are the emergency workers who are coming back. It was just about 10 minutes ago that we described to you the possibility of that North Tower collapsing. About 5 minutes after we went off the air, it did collapse. Once again, we have no idea at this point the loss of life. I can only tell you there were hundreds of emergency workers down there, about 5 or 6 blocks. It took probably about, I would say, no more than 50 or 60 seconds for that dust cloud, dust and smoke, to literally make it the 5 or 6 blocks up here and begin to envelop us, at which point we started to move out of the way. There were literally dozens and dozens of firemen who were trying to run past us. In fact, our cameraman even captains in his car and drove. The people who you see here are pretty much all emergency workers. Many of them that I have seen in the last 2 to 3 minutes, quite frankly, are coming out of here. And remember this, these are professionals. They're coming out of there looking literally stunned, in shock, many of them, struggling for breath, obviously in serious distress. Breathing problems are the biggest problem for those who manage to make it safely out of that area down below us. You can't see much more than a block south of me right now. And the World Trade Center probably stands about 10 blocks south of where I am at this moment. And as you can see now, the dust is beginning to pick up here. It really depends on which way the wind blows as to whether or not we get heavy dust or not. But at this point, I can tell you that in the first few minutes, emergency workers were trying just basically to get out of there, to survive. You could see that written in their faces. The situation was so desperate, they just wanted to get out of there. Now, many of them are beginning to regroup. A couple of them asked me where their commander might be. They're trying to get together and go back in there and try to take care of the people who obviously are in serious trouble. There's no other way to describe it. The language here, at times, if I slip into language which seems a little melodramatic, forgive me, but this is a circumstance which is very, very difficult to describe in many ways without sounding melodramatic. Certainly in more than 20 years of covering horrific events, this is something that I've never seen before. As we say, the emergency workers now beginning to try to gather themselves. Over there you can see a police emergency service unit. They're trying basically now to reestablish some kind of a safe perimeter. And many of the emergency workers basically just happy to be alive. Certainly that picture tells it all. Many of them just happy to be alive at this point, having survived what is an extraordinary event, the collapse of 2 towers. As we said earlier in our report, 110 stories each. I will tell you that what I saw fall had to be at least 40, 50 stories of that building at first. The skeleton was left at about, I would say, the 50 or 60th floor after the shell, after the structure of the building fell down. The skeleton, the steel skeleton, was literally sheaved off, and it took probably about another 30 seconds before the skeleton collapsed into the street. That was the last we saw of the World Trade Center, and that was maybe 10 minutes ago when that final skeleton, the metal skeleton, steel skeleton, collapsed into the street.
That was
But
NBC's Pat Dawson again. He's standing about 10 blocks from where the World Trade Center towers used to stand. You're looking at the collapse of one of those towers right now. We now have an AP News alert out of Pittsburgh. Officials at Somerset County Airport are confirming the crash of a large plane just north of the airport. That's about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. Again, officials at Somerset County Airport confirm the crash of a large plane north of that airport, which is located about 80 miles to the southeast of the city of Pittsburgh. We do not know whether that crash of that plane is related to what has become an obvious terrorist attack both here in New York City and in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon.
Matt, we just got a late word that State Department security officials are denying those reports of a car bomb at the State Department. Betsy Stewart is at the C Street entrance and also says there's no sign of a car bomb. Betsy Stewart is one of our producers who's very familiar with the State Department. The building has been evacuated. Top officials are still believed to be in the operations center, however. Those are highly secured areas in terms of penetration physically and otherwise. Colin Powell, as Andrea reported earlier, was headed for Lima, Peru, but he's done a U-turn and he's coming back. The president is on his way back. He'll have a National Security Council meeting, we think probably at around 11:30 or perhaps around noon. That is likely to take place either at Andrews Air Force Base or in some more secure location. The White House has been evacuated, especially with this report of another plane going down, this time in the Pittsburgh area. There were planes in the air when the order went out that there would be no more takeoffs, so we don't know how much more damage these terrorists had in mind.
Let's go to Bob Hager, who is, of course, NBC's aviation expert. Bob, what kind of information are you getting from your sources?
Not a lot, Katie, from the FAA. For instance, they are not talking about any possible hijacks. Normally, they can tell when there's a hijack in progress because the pilot, the original pilot of the plane, has various buttons that he can push that set off a code and tell them that there were hijacks. But maybe as a matter of security, they're not saying anything about that. They did stop all takeoffs in the U.S. at 9:25 this morning, and then for pilots that were in the air, the question came up what to do about them, and they were given some discretion to continue on to their destination, so long as it was not the New York or Washington area, or divert to an airport if that's what they wanted to do. I saw the blast at the Pentagon, not the blast take place, but moments after it. I'd been at National Airport trying to get up to New York, and you could see that smoke billowing out of the Pentagon. I can give you a little description of what it's like on the streets of Washington, because it was quite crowded trying to work my way back here to NBC. They have now given not only the White House and those key buildings like the U.S. Capitol, but at this point they've given all federal employees the word to leave their offices and get home. Right. So there are traffic jams in Washington.
Okay, Bob, I'm sure you're going to get more information for us momentarily, but first we want to go to Jim Miklashevsky at the Pentagon, who has some more information. Mick?
Katie, they're still clearing people away from the Pentagon. Still, security forces believe that there may be another incoming plane headed in the Washington region. But there was a very telling, dramatic moment just a second ago when a U.S. Air Force F-16 flew very low level, did a wide sweeping turn around the Pentagon and back over Washington. And as one Air Force officer standing near me said, "My God, they're now flying air cover over Washington." A very dramatic moment, a milestone in what Tom has already described as a declaration of war. Terrorist war against the U.S.
Let's go back and show you the pictures of lower Manhattan, where the situation only gets worse, not better. That is the financial district of the world. It's also a residential area and a great commercial area. Both Twin Trade Tower buildings now have collapsed onto the ground. There is an untold loss of life. The ripple effect goes on with all the smoke and dust that is spread out across that very densely populated area. It goes down below ground as well as in the high-rise buildings there. There are many residential structures in that area as well. Some heroic rescue workers were down there trying to get people out of the building when the first building came down, and then the second building did as well. Without any sound, and looking at this, there is a kind of a surreal quality. but that is the epicenter of a great, great national tragedy and a great loss of life. No question about it this morning.
We're talking about people who were hurt, perhaps killed in this blast. Many of them have been brought to area hospitals, including St. Vincent's Hospital. Bob Bazell is there. Bob, what's the latest?
Well, Katie, ambulances continue to stream in. Several New York City streets have been closed. Major avenues have been closed off so that ambulances can continue to come in. In addition, the New York City subway system has now been closed down, and several buildings that were not involved in the World Trade Center area have been shut down, and people have been told to go home, but a lot of them are just wandering aimlessly on the street. Many people openly weeping and hugging each other. This is clearly is a time that, as Tom described, is very close to the beginning of a war, and but the casualties do keep coming in. Burns, smoke inhalation, very severe, and again, all the medical people that I've talked to say this is just the tip of the iceberg. We expect casualties to be coming in all through the night and way into tomorrow and beyond.
Bob, if you could just stand by for a moment, because we have this report from AP that I'm just simply going to read. A large plane crashed Tuesday morning just north of the Somerset County Airport, about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. Airport officials said the plane, believed to be a Boeing 767, crashed around 10 a.m. about 8 miles east of Jennerstown, according to County 911 dispatchers. WPXI-TV reported. The crash came the same morning that terrorists crashed 2 planes into the World Trade Center in New York City, and the twin 110-story towers collapsed. Explosions also rocked the Pentagon and the State Department, although that was refuted moments ago, and spread fear across the nation. There was no other immediate details on the Pennsylvania crash, and it was not clear whether the crash was related to the others. Again, that was a report, a bulletin that was just issued by the Associated Press.
You know what is so stunning about all of this, Matt and Katie, is that there has been no indication whatsoever that this very carefully coordinated massive attack was going to occur. There's been a complete intelligence failure here. And there will be, obviously, down the road, a price to pay for that.
Well, that's actually not all that surprising, Tom, because we've often talked in the past, following every terrorist event, about how vulnerable the United States is, and many terrorist experts say how unprepared they are. And the question, of course, is, can you ever prepare for an attack like this?
Well, that's true, but we also have people out there who are in listening posts, and we've penetrated these kinds of organizations, but to have this kind of an attack, this sophisticated, this efficient, striking at the heart of the nation's capital, striking at the heart of New York City. Now, and if this is true that this plane went down as a result of this attack, we don't know whether it's the end of it. Right. This is a massively well-coordinated attack of some kind that is nothing short but of a declaration of war on this country.
And terrorist experts are now saying, and intelligence experts are now saying, that there are a very short or a very few number of terrorist groups that are capable of this kind of planning, and a couple of names come to mind, and I'm not going to throw them out now because we certainly don't have any reports. Before I go to Jamie Gangel, I just want to say that some of the descriptions coming from eyewitnesses in Lower Manhattan of these explosions occurring are chilling. One man talked about getting off a PATH train, that's a subway train here in Lower Manhattan, and looking up at the building after the first explosion and seeing people jump out of the windows. We have no idea how high up, but hearing people on the ground scream each time another person jumped out of a window, attempting to get to safety. And then when the second explosion occurred, he felt the heat of the explosion on the back of his neck. Jamie Gangel is our national correspondent. She's joining us now on the phone. Jamie?
Matt, you know, speaking of those intelligence officials that you were just mentioning, now finally we can no longer reach on the phone anyone at the CIA. Apparently the CIA has been evacuated. We know the National Security Agency, which is the electronic eavesdropping agency, which is south of Baltimore near Fort Meade, Maryland, that they have been shut down. What we're hearing from both places is that all non-essential personnel have been told to leave. And I can only imagine that probably they are trying to move some of their operations out of those buildings as well for backup procedure. But in addition to whatever intelligence was or was missed in all of this, we now have perhaps some problems gathering intelligence as those buildings are now being shut down.
Right, Jamie, thank you very much. Tom, let's go back and talk about something you mentioned a second ago, that is just, it shows the enormity of this situation. In addition to what we assume will be horrendous loss of life, all planes in this country have been grounded. I mean, you think about the impact that has, and I mean, is there ever a time we can imagine something like that ever happening before?
The most powerful nation in the world, and national security officials and terrorist experts have been saying for some time, a small band of very willful and sophisticated people can bring us to a halt, and they have done just that. There's a psychological terror as a result of all of this, as you can only imagine how it plays out across the country today. People looking in who don't live in New York or live in the nation's capital are wondering what happens around me. It is hard to overstate the consequences of all of this, and this is just the beginning. We'll be living with this story and dealing with the consequences of it for some time. The United States will change as a result of all of this. We already thought that there was a lot of security in America at the airports and so on, and yet there was a successful hijacking at Boston Airport today, and the consequences of that we're seeing on the screen here this morning. So this is going to change this country profoundly in not just the coming days, but the coming months, to say nothing, as you have been saying, Matt, of the horrific loss of life that we're witnessing.
On that subject, you know, and Katie and Tom, to complete a thought I started before, you both were out at the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, a much smaller building, and it took rescue workers more than a week to find all the people trapped in that wreckage. We have a building here that, two buildings of each 110 stories. It's mind-boggling to think of what it's going to take over these next days and weeks to find survivors or victims of these explosions.
And of course, it continues to be a terrifying situation because there are a number of planes up in the air as this took place, and a number of unconfirmed and frightening reports about those planes that we heard earlier from Jim Miklashevsky, that somebody had gotten word at the Pentagon that perhaps there is another plane, whether they were talking about the one north of Pittsburgh or it's completely unclear. And it's also unclear whether these planes that were en route to a destination have been grounded themselves. In other words, that they were emergency landings or what. I think it's very difficult to get any communication with airports all across the country because they're, I'm sure, completely chaotic.
Katie, you know from your time in Oklahoma City and all the time that you spent with the victims there, the psychological effect of all of this on this country and how it's going to affect our whole sense of security and, in a way, our sense of innocence about this is Fortress America. It couldn't happen here. We said that about the Murrah Federal Building. We even said it about Columbine High School. This is an incident of a whole different magnitude.
I have to say, I've never, ever, witnessed anything quite as horrific. I hate to keep saying it because we have seen these types of things play out in movies and, you know, in worst-case scenarios and in dramatic renditions of this kind of incident, but certainly no one has ever seen this kind of thing unfold. And it is really shocking.
We want to go now. On the phone, we have Neil Livingston, who is an expert on terrorism. Mr. Livingston, can you hear me?
I can.
You know, we were talking about what it would take in terms of planning and coordination to pull off an attack like this with so many prongs. At least 2 attacks here in New York City, 1 in Washington, D.C. We don't know if the crash of that plane outside Pittsburgh is related, but give me an idea of how many groups there are in the country that would be capable of something like this.
Well, there are very few groups in the world capable of this kind of action, and you have to remember also that we have the people who hijacked these planes were going to a certain death as well, so they were suicide bombers in effect. And that probably suggests that this was not something like the Medellin cartel or one of the other groups that has the financial wherewithal and the infrastructure to carry out coordinated attacks.
Yeah, I know.
I think that obviously the finger of suspicion, and we're always very cautious about pointing that in any particular direction, but we have to look to the Middle East. We have to look to Osama bin Laden. We have to look at some Palestinian groups right now.
But even in the past, when we were talking about Osama bin Laden and his group, there have been intelligence experts who've picked up conversations, transmissions that occurred before an attack to give some kind of indication, even if we didn't understand them till after the attack. Is it unusual that with so many prongs to an attack that there wouldn't have been some type of warning through intelligence sources?
Well, it's a myth that we always know that these things are coming down. Part of our problem is, and we just had a warning go out to our embassies and military bases in the Far East. That could have been a feint. That could have been a diversion. We have so many warnings these days that people, they tend to fade into the background noise unless we have real specific information about an upcoming attack, generally we don't take action. And these groups are very hard to penetrate. They're focused with bonds of kinship and people who have known each other for years. So it doesn't surprise me that we didn't know that this was coming.
All right, Mr. Livingston, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Benjamin Levy is at the scene near the World Trade Center. Actually, he's going to tell us precisely where he is and what he saw. Benjamin, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, Benjamin?
Yes?
Hi, it's Katie Couric. Can you tell me where you are and what you have seen or what you were seeing?
Well, right now I'm in Lower Manhattan, but I was working, I work at the Federal Building behind City Hall. And we were just sitting at our desks about 9 a.m. this morning. We heard a big explosion. Then about 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes later, we saw the other plane hit the building, the second tower, and then we just evacuated. And as we started to walk away, we turned around about maybe 15 minutes after we left the building, and the second tower just disappeared from sight. And I tell you, I've never seen anything more horrible in my entire life.
Did you see any people, any casualties, Mr. Levy?
We we bumped into a guy from Tower 1 who said that he had a chance to get out of the building after the plane hit the first one. He had a chance to get out of the second one, but he said that people were jumping out of the windows to get away from the fire.
Where are you now, Benjamin?
I'm in a hair salon in Lower Manhattan, talking to you guys.
Well, obviously, that was...
And was the whole Federal Building evacuated, Mr. Levy?
Yeah, well, we started running out of the building as soon as we saw the second explosion. And then I work on the 22nd floor. As soon as we were down at the bottom, they sounded the alarm, and then they announced evacuation, but most of us were already out.
How far physically are you actually from the World Trade Center?
Right now, or where?
No, when this happened.
About 6 blocks away.
6 blocks away. And you were able to get out pretty easily, and there were no kind of electrical problems in your building as a result of the impact of the fire or anything like that?
No, we got out pretty good, thank God.
And as that whole area down there, the City Hall, the Federal Building, and all the other commercial buildings, they've all been evacuated as well?
Well, yeah, as we were leaving, the police were telling all the shop owners to shut their shops and go home.
And that must be enveloped by the smoke and dust and everything that we see now, because that covers the entire lower end of Manhattan, which is a considerably large area, not only physically, but in terms of the financial networks, the commerce that is done there, a lot of residential areas.
Yeah, you could smell the smoke. And you could smell it, but it wasn't. We were walking away from it.
Benjamin Levy, Benjamin, thanks so much for talking with us. We appreciate it, and we're glad you're safe.
Katie, I've got just a little rundown here, if I can, Matt, for just a moment about what's going on around the country. The State Department officials have been moved into the State Department Training Center in Arlington, Virginia. The state has been evacuated, obviously. In Minneapolis, St. Paul International Airport shut down. The IDS Center in downtown Minneapolis, tallest building, evacuated. Georgia, all flights at Hartsfield Atlanta International Airport closed. The CNN Center, world headquarters of cable news network, was closed to the public. In Maryland, officials are tightening security throughout the state. Of course, that's the home of Andrews Air Force Base. Navy installations throughout the Hampton Roads, home to the world's largest Navy base, have been placed under increased security. In Pennsylvania, Philadelphia International Airport has been closed, and of course the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall are being closed as well.
In fact, all national monuments, Tom, I believe, have been evacuated and closed.
And California, the state has been put on the highest alert. They're on tactical alert in Los Angeles. The Department of Energy's Nuclear Weapons and Research Complex in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, put under heightened security.
It is now coming up on 10:59 East Coast time. We'll give you a recap of what we've seen so far in just a moment. Just a quick note from one of the hospitals downtown in New York City, where they say that hundreds of people have been burned from head to toe. This is from Dr. Stephen Stern at St. Vincent's Hospital in Greenwich Village. About 50 or 60 doctors and nurses standing by in scrubs. The entire entrance to the emergency room was lined with stretchers covered with white sheets. Doctors said the victims mostly had burns.
Of course, they're being treated in a number of area hospitals, including St. Vincent's, NYU. Downtown is just about 5 minutes away. As a spokesperson told us earlier, they've had a lot of experience dealing with problems at the World Trade Center from that February terrorist bombing in 1993. And obviously, they have all been mobilized, and emergency crews are working feverishly outside the World Trade Center.
You are looking at a live picture of Lower Manhattan at 11 o'clock East Coast time on a day of tragedy and terror in the United States. You're looking at what remains of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. Earlier this morning, just before 9 o'clock and just after 9 o'clock, two planes and individual attacks struck each tower of the World Trade Center, causing gaping holes in both towers. You're looking at a tape now after the first impact, and there is the second impact of a large jet flown, we now believe, deliberately into the second tower. It was a short time after that the towers collapsed. And then there was an attack in Washington, D.C. We now have confirmed reports that a plane crashed into the Pentagon. We have no reports of confirmed injuries or death. However, it's clear officials all across the country are now saying this is a deliberate terrorist attack on the United States. As Tom has put it so far this morning, this is a declaration of war by terrorists against the United States.
And of course, we should mention, by the way, Tom, before we talk about terrorism, that another large plane crashed as well, just north of Somerset County Airport, 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was a Boeing 767 that crashed around 10 o'clock this morning, and it is unclear whether the crash was related to the other crashes that took place this morning.
President Bush is en route back to Washington. The State Department has been evacuated. There's been that attack on the Pentagon. That has been evacuated. The White House has been evacuated. There will be an emergency meeting of the National Security Council. This is the most serious attack on the United States since Pearl Harbor. There has never been a terrorist attack of this magnitude, in fact, on any country in the world so far as we can tell. The untold loss of life in New York alone. We only know that there have been hundreds of burn victims brought to various hospitals. Both Twin Trade Tower centers have collapsed to the ground. That's a densely populated area, obviously. We don't know the number of casualties yet at the Pentagon, and we don't know the number of deaths in that plane that went down, as Katie pointed, north of Pittsburgh.
And what we've left out a piece of information, we know for a fact that one of these planes that was crashed into the World Trade Center was hijacked from Boston this morning. It was American Airlines Flight 11 en route from Boston to Los Angeles. We had reports it had been diverted to JFK, and a short time later, perhaps while feigning a landing at JFK, it veered dramatically into the World Trade Center.
All air travel has been stopped. Airports have been closed across the country to planes departing. In terms of planes that are en route, it is unclear if they've made emergency landings or if they're reaching their final destinations. The White House has been evacuated. The State Department, the CIA has been evacuated. Of course, many, many buildings in Manhattan and Lower Manhattan have been evacuated as well.
And transatlantic flights to this country are being diverted to Canada. Still, no claim of responsibility that is verifiable or credible at this time. Yasser Arafat has condemned this attack, saying it's shocking and appalling.
Of course, we should mention back in February of 1993 was when that bomb went off in the garage of the World Trade Center, killing 6 people, injuring 1,000 people. And that, of course, was an unbelievable scene. But compared to this
is what they intended to do back then.
Minor. Let's go to Bob Hager, who has some information for us. Bob?
Katie, I was just thinking as you commented there about the various planes involved. The one that we know of so far, because it's confirmed by American Airlines, is that Flight 11, which had been scheduled from Boston's Logan Airport to Los Angeles, that Flight 11 was hijacked this morning, and it is presumed that it may have been one of the planes that went into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. There were at least 2 more planes involved in this, because the other tower was hit, and then the Pentagon was also, there were eyewitness accounts that it was a plane that went into the Pentagon. But so far, we don't know the sources of those planes, whether they were commercial planes that had been hijacked, whether they were private planes, whether they'd been hijacked at all. And I would point out the report from Somerset County, Pennsylvania, is so far just local authorities commenting. The FAA has not confirmed that crash, so we're waiting to hear more, and I'm hearing just now, bear with me.
Bob.
Oh, FAA is now confirming this adds to those earlier rumors that there are several airplanes that are unaccounted for. So there were some rumors that there might have been other planes hijacked that we didn't yet know the outcome of it. And now the FAA is confirming that there are several, was the word I heard, several planes that are unaccounted for that were evidently hijacked and has not come to a conclusion yet.
Bob, we'd like you to get a list of as many of those as you can, as specifically as possible. We're going to show you now, we're going to replay a tape of the second attack on the World Trade Centers in slow-mo. There's the plane. As you can see, a large airline-type plane. And now the collision. Flown deliberately into the second one.
When they say several, Bob, do they give you any indication of what they're talking about?
Several is the description that I had, and that was just passed on to me a moment ago, so I wasn't talking personally to the FAA person, but several is the account I had.
And Bob, American Airlines, the Flight 11 out of Boston, do we know what exactly kind of plane that was and perhaps how many people were on board?
We do not yet, but I think we're going to get some additional information from American. They were supposed to be adding comment to this from Dulles Airport here in a few moments, so we might learn a little bit more about that. But right now, it's very important to worry about rumors and so forth. I'd like to hear some more confirmation that a plane really has crashed in Pennsylvania, for instance, since the FAA hasn't confirmed that. But I think one needs to be very careful here in this chaotic situation.
We have a report here that Osama bin Laden, who is often identified as the world's leading terrorist, warned 3 weeks ago that he and his followers would carry out an unprecedented attack on U.S. interest for its support of Israel. An Arab journalist with access said to him Tuesday in London.
Abdel Bari Atwan, editor of the London-based Al-Qud Al-Arabi newspaper, said Islamic fundamentalists led by bin Laden was almost certainly behind the attack of the World Trade Center in New York. Quote, it's most likely the work of Islamic fundamentalists. Osama bin Laden warned 3 weeks ago that he would attack American interest in an unprecedented attack, a very big one, Atwan told Reuters.
He has interviewed bin Laden, and he maintains close contact with his followers, according to Reuters. So that's the first report that we've had that Osama bin Laden may have been responsible. Obviously, it was a very sophisticated organization, carefully coordinated. It had to have its origins in this country. Louis Freeh, the FBI director, as he left office, said that his continuing great concern with the number of terrorist cells that exist in America, not just in some shadowy enclave in Afghanistan or somewhere in the subcontinent, but they've taken root in this country because it's so easy to get here.
Let's talk a little bit more about Osama bin Laden, because as you say, he was associated with the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Why don't we talk about him and what he has done here in the United States, Tom, to give people a little bit of background?
Well, he is from Saudi Arabia originally. He's wealthy. He is very sophisticated in terms of using the new technology. We believe that he is being harbored in Afghanistan. No one knows for sure. A number of people have attempted to get to him and have been unsuccessful in that. They also believe that he was behind the bombings in Kenya as well. He is obviously a zealot of great, dark passion, and most of it directed at the United States.
Brian Jenkins, our terrorist expert, remains on the phone. Brian, tell us a little bit more about Osama bin Laden, and if you think that he might, in fact, have carried out this kind of well-orchestrated, horrific attack on the United States.
Well, certainly he would have to be included in any very, very short list of suspects, but it is premature to be able to say with any confidence who might be responsible in something like this. I mean, we know what has happened, we know when it has happened, we know where it has happened, who and why it takes a little bit longer to figure out. I have no doubt that we will ultimately be able to identify who is responsible. But until that time, we can only speculate.
But Brian, in an attack of this magnitude that is so carefully coordinated and executed with such cold-blooded efficiency, it obviously had to be a very sophisticated organization.
Clearly, this took organization, and while organization has in terrorism in recent years become more fluid, that is, we are not dealing with the identifiable terrorist organizations that we dealt with in the 1970s and 1980s. Terrorism in the last decade has been a lot more fluid, and from these universes of like-minded fanatics, people have been able to put together these ad hoc conspiracies. Nonetheless, the magnitude of this attack, the coordination involved in this attack, does indicate a considerable amount of planning and organization.
Right. Mr. Jenkins, if you'll hold for a second, I want to go back to Bob Hager of NBC. Bob, we were talking a second. Apparently, we don't have Bob at the moment. All right, let's go to Jim Kallstrom, who's the former director of the FBI's New York office. Jim, we just talked about the fact that sooner or later we'll know who did this, but where does law enforcement start? Obviously, we know that in several cases we're talking about the plane as the weapon, so to speak, but where do we start to track who's responsible?
Well, Matt, I think someone said it there, this is unprecedented. And law enforcement will start from the base of intelligence that they already have, and hopefully always have. And I mean, that's the argument in the country. I mean, we have a very short memory in the United States, and maybe that's good, maybe it's bad, but that's why we need effective law enforcement. Although in a free society, as Brian Jenkins points out, and I agree with him totally, it's very, very difficult to stop things like this. I mean, the first goal would have been to stop this horrific event. And, of course, the second goal now is to save as many people as we can and to find out who did it. And thirdly, and most importantly, not let something like this happen again.
Jim, if you were starting the investigation tomorrow morning, where would you begin with the man who hijacked that American Airlines flight?
I'd probably have 100 courses of action taken simultaneously. I'm sure that's what's going on as we speak. It's a bit chaos. I mean, I just look at the TWA tragedy and why we responded the way we did. We were at a heightened threat for terrorism, and it sure looked like terrorism, and this is so much bigger than that. It's chaotic, but law enforcement's trying to make sense out of it. They're trying to obviously not let something happen again in the next 10 minutes, the next hour, the next 2 hours. So that's on the mind of public safety officials in Washington and locally. And, of course, a long-range plan to see what we can do about stopping this. You know, we live in a free society. People come and go. Our borders are open. We see that talked about on the news every night, not so much from a terrorism standpoint, from a work standpoint, but people land at our major airports every day undocumented. So it's extremely difficult. As Brian pointed out earlier, these terrorist cells are very insulated from each other. There's no particular hierarchy like there was in the mafia where you put a particular wiretap in at the top and you know everything that's going on. That's not the case here. We know there's tremendous hatred. I mean, we've talked about this in law enforcement for over a decade. They blew up the World Trade Center. They tried to bring the World Trade Center down. They've blown up many other government symbols, and Ramsey Youssef tried to blow up 11 jumbo jets simultaneously.
Okay, Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Katie Couric. We want to go to Pat Dawson, who's down at the World Trade Center with an official, talking to that official. Pat?
Yes, Katie, forgive me, we're just trying to get obviously, as you can imagine, Joe, go ahead, you may put the microphone on there. As you can imagine, this is a very, very difficult situation here. We are here with a couple of guests who can give us at least some insight into what's going on there. This is Chief William Hall of the Port Authority Police of New York. As we told you earlier, the Port Authority Police have jurisdiction over the Trade Center. And also Alan Rice, who's the director of the World Trade Center. Gentlemen, if I get you just to stand like that. First of all, Chief, do we have any idea of how many people are in there?
We have no idea. Now, as you know, it was pretty much rush hour time that this took place this morning, so the numbers we don't know yet. We tried to get almost everybody out that we could early on.
After the first two crashes, when the planes hit the building, there was roughly about, I would say, what, an hour and 15 minutes between that and the point where the South Tower collapsed. How many people you were able to get out? Do you have any idea?
We don't know. We tried to do a floor-by-floor search. New York City Police, the Fire Department, Port Authority Police, best they could, tried to get everybody out. But as you know, there were people still coming out after that building came down.
Do you have any idea how many people would normally be in the building at 8:30 or north. This is the director of the World Trade Center.
There are probably 10,000 people in each tower. 10,000 people in each tower would typically be in there on a normal business day. And we get about another 5,000 visitors during the course of the entire day. So by 8:30, 9 o'clock, the building should have been full.
Okay, so in other words, by 8:30 to 9, you figure the building would have been approaching full capacity with the workers. So we are talking about roughly 10,000 people
per tower.
Per tower. Now, at this point, obviously, you've got a situation, these towers having collapsed, that is bordering on chaotic. What's the first challenge? What are you doing at this moment? I've seen emergency workers try to go in there after the first couple crashes and come running back out. What are you trying to do now?
I guess the next step is between the chief and myself and my staff. We're going to go assess the condition and determine whether it's safe or not to send personnel into the building to continue looking and evacuating people.
Are there any emergency workers in there now?
We don't know that.
We don't know.
If they were in there now, presumably they would have been trapped in there from the earlier.
It's possible. It's possible from what we saw happen here. Yeah, very much so. We were trapped ourselves in the building in the basement. We were the building collapsed and we came out of that. But yes,
you were in the basement of the South Tower.
No, we were in the basement of building 5, 6.
Okay.
Right,
yeah.
and I was in building 5. We had to dig our way out to get out.
You dug your way out. What was that like?
Scary.
Scary, but I was a volunteer fireman for years, so you learn not to panic.
Yeah. What was the one last thing? What do you do right now to try to get to those people? How long before you get to those people?
We're going to have to wait and make the building safe. We have our engineers here, our law department here. We're going to make the building safe. Then we're going to send in rescue teams. We're already breaking the men and women up into rescue teams, and they're ready to go once the building is declared safe of what's left.
And how soon before they're back in there?
We're going to try and do this right now, and I hope soon.
Is any part of the building still standing down there? We can't really see.
I can't see either. I can see what you see. I don't know.
You don't even know how much of the building is left.
No, that's where we're going now, to assess the condition.
All right,
so thank you very much.
We understand you have emergency work to do. We appreciate it very much taking the time out. The latest report that we have at this point from those who are in charge of that building, speaking to the director of the World Trade Center and also to the chief of the Port Authority Police, they are at this point, as they said, just trying to put together a plan to go in there and just assess the damage. This sequence of extraordinary tragedies, this sequence of catastrophes, really, first the 2 crashes, and then in sequence, one tower of the building coming down, another tower of the building coming down. Obviously, the first order of business is to try to organize themselves and to go back in there in a way it doesn't endanger more emergency workers, because I can tell you, based on what I've seen, there have been a number of emergency workers who were put in harm's way this morning. They had to be, but the toll has to be extraordinary. Tom, we'll throw it back to you.
Thank you very much, Pat Dawson. Those are the first numbers that we've had this morning. They think there were about 20,000 people in the 2 buildings at the time of the attack, to say nothing of the untold number of people on the streets or in nearby buildings who could also have suffered injuries or worse when the buildings did come down. This is tantamount to war. You're looking at the lower end of Manhattan. A plane has attacked the Pentagon this morning as well. There is a report of a hijacked plane that went down near Pittsburgh. NBC's Robert Hager is tracking all of this through the FAA for us. Robert?
Well, there's some more information now on the one confirmed hijacking that we know of, and that was that American Airlines flight number 11. It was a 767, took off from Boston Logan this morning. It was to go to Los Angeles. American Airlines confirmed it was hijacked, and we have some first numbers on how many were on board. 58 passengers and a crew of 11, so 69 people on that flight. That's presumed to be one of the planes that went into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. The other planes that we know of, the other tower of the World Trade Center and the plane that went that crashed into the Pentagon area, those are unknown flights. The Pennsylvania crash, which is still not the FAA, but it's local authorities saying it. Our affiliate in Pittsburgh has heard traffic on the radio scanners saying that it was a flight that originated in Chicago and was headed to Cleveland, but I'd caution that that sort of information coming off radio scanners is very, very sketchy and so very unreliable, but it's the first report off the scanners.
Bob, an FBI spokesman is quoted as saying that there were 4 flights that were hijacked altogether. We know about American 11. I'm not going to mention the names of the carriers or the numbers on the others. Are you getting any kind of detail like that at the FAA?
No, the FAA is not getting into that kind of detail, and a moment ago I said that they said there were several planes still in the air, and that was a report was coming to me while I was on the air, so I'm getting it secondhand, and now I understand what they were saying is that they had unaccounted flights, flights that were unaccounted for, so that could mean, in addition to the American Airlines Flight 11, the other planes that went into those other buildings. It does not necessarily imply that there are still planes in the air. A little more information. Canada has now shut all of its airports down, but it will leave the airports open to allow incoming planes that were bound for the U.S. and are now prohibited from landing at U.S. airports to divert into Canada. But otherwise, Canada is allowing no takeoffs, and it's not taking inbound flights from any other place other than planes that were bound for the U.S.
Well, now we get word from American Airlines, Bob, just stay with us here for a moment, that it had 2 aircraft in this tragedy. Flight 11, a Boeing 767 with 81 passengers and 9 flight attendants and 2 pilots. Flight 77, they're saying, a Boeing 757 operating from Washington Dulles to L.A. with 58 passengers, 4 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. That's from Al Henkel, who's one of our guys in the Dallas area, from American Airlines.
Yes, so now we know the identity of 2 of the flights involved in today's incidents. That leaves at least 1 more, and if the report of the crash in Pittsburgh is accurate, that leaves 2 more that we don't have identified yet, but it gives us those 2 that you mentioned.
Well, it could have been both these planes could have been into the Twin Trade Towers, because it was plainly there were 2 airliners that went into the Twin Trade Towers up here, as we saw on the videotape of the crash.
Okay, they say there's a bomb in the school here. I was told by firefighters.
Pat Dawson, let's go to you in Lower Manhattan. You have a report of another bomb.
All right, Tom, we've just been told we're being evacuated. You can see all the emergency workers walking north on the West Side Highway in New York. We've been told by firefighters here that there is a report of a bomb in this building. This is a school, a high school right here. And as you can see, they're moving everybody away from this building. They've said that there's a bomb in the building. They are evacuating us north now. That is according to firefighters on the scene, and we're going to move out of here right now just to keep ourselves safe. So we're going to start walking north ourselves, but that's what we're being told by New York City firefighters here, that there were reports of a bomb in that high school right there. It's called Stuyvesant High School, and so we are walking north to get out of the way. You can see just to my left here, these are even the ambulances which were down there are being moved north. The firefighters are being moved north. Everybody is being moved north. We're being asked by the police now to go north and get out of the way. Officer, do you have any idea of what the problem is?
There's a report of a secondary device possibly in the area of this school, so they're going to move everybody back as a precaution.
Secondary device meaning a bomb?
Possibly.
Okay, and where did that report come from? Was it called in?
It came in over our radios, and it's reported through our supervisors on down, so we're pulling everybody back.
And that's in the Stuyvesant High School right there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Officer McQuaid.
Pat,
that's Officer McQuaid of the New York City Emergency Service.
Pat, that school has been evacuated?
Yeah, well, I don't think there was anyone in the school, Katie, this morning. At this point, I think everybody had been evacuated from here probably when the first events took place early this morning, just because of the fact that it's so close to the World Trade Center. Most of these buildings around here have been evacuated, so I would imagine, I never saw any kids going into that school this morning, so I'm going to presume that they never even allowed them to get to school this morning, and that anywhere that were here at 8:45 were probably moved out almost within moments after this the crash took place, because it literally is only about 10 blocks north of here, and I haven't seen any students coming in or out.
All right, Pat Dawson, thank you very much. The big story, obviously, that is still to be resolved is how many planes were hijacked. We now have a report that there could have been as many as 4 of them. We know that 2 planes were involved here at the Twin Trade Towers. There's a report of a plane down north of Pittsburgh. Another kind of plane went into the Pentagon, but there could still be planes in the air that are under the control of hijackers. We don't know for sure what flights they are or where they're headed. There are some unconfirmed reports of them. We can only tell you that American 11 and American 77 have been identified by American Airlines as 2 of the planes that were involved in the incidents today.
And the hijackings are scattered somewhat around a fairly wide area, and we just have to remember that 2 of these planes did arrive at the World Trade Center within 18 or 20 minutes of each other, just to, again, point out the coordination of this attack. We're going to go down to NBC's Tim Russert, who is standing by with more information. Tim? Apparently Tim can't hear us.
All right, obviously people are scrambling to get as much information. I think we do now
Tim,
have
do you
Tim's
hear us?
audio. Tim?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please give us your information.
I've been just speaking to the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Porter Goss, and we're trying to get him on the telephone here and continue our conversation on the air. He told me that he was on the phone with House Speaker Hastert about the situation when a code red was declared on the Hill, that the Speaker was moved to a secure place because he is in the line of command of our national leadership. Congressman Porter Goss, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, also said that this extremely well-coordinated attack could only be done by a very few people, very few organizations, and that because of the magnitude of it, it'll be relatively easy to, quote, see their fingerprints. And then we as a nation are going to have to make a very decisive retaliation as soon as we are able to identify exactly who this was. Mr. Goss said he's obviously never seen anything quite like this. As it plays out, perhaps more to come. And he will be joining us shortly on the telephone here so we all can hear his words directly. He will be brief throughout the day because of his position. He has access to the nation's utmost secrets.
All right, Tim, obviously President Bush is on his way back to the nation's capital. Is it your understanding that he has arrived yet, or do you know his whereabouts at this point?
Katie, I do not know that, but I do know that while the White House has been evacuated, the Situation Room continues. There are people in the White House doing their jobs, and so with the Pentagon. In the nerve centers of both of those facilities, our highest-ranking officials are obviously monitoring this situation, making a determination as just how widespread this attack may be, and trying very, very hard to get a handle on exactly who did it and just how we respond.
Tim, we have secure areas, obviously, for the president in case of a nuclear attack in the past, in the mountains of Virginia, not too far from Washington, by helicopter ride. Any indication that the president may have to go to one of those facilities?
We have not yet heard that, Tom. I asked that question, and the response was, we're not going there, meaning responding to my question, not necessarily traveling there. But they obviously are on the highest state of alert. They understand the magnitude of this. They understand that the American people now are going to be waiting and watching for a response from Washington, other than what the president gave in Florida. As you might expect, even our most sophisticated communications 2001 era, it is still extremely difficult trying to get any kinds of information. The cell phones are down. Many of the hard lines are down. But I've been assured by people at the White House and at the Pentagon that, in fact, they are in touch with each other and have the situation is under control the best they can. But like all of us, they simply don't know yet who did this.
Tim, you talked about Porter Goss. Obviously, the Capitol was evacuated along with other major monuments and major government buildings in Washington, D.C. Where are people, members of Congress, right now? Have they assembled anywhere, and what are they doing, and where are they?
Katie, after the explosion at the World Trade Center, Congress convened, said a prayer, and then recessed. And many of the members headed home. They were obviously going to look forward to a very difficult week in Washington dealing with the economy. I'm told Porter Goss is on the telephone now with me. Congressman, can you hear me? Congressman Goss, can you hear me? We'll continue to effort that, Katie. But most of the congressmen have now, and congresswomen have returned to their homes here in Washington because the building itself has been evacuated. The leadership of the Congress, as I mentioned, Speaker Hastert particularly, is in a secure place, and he will be in constant communication with the President and Vice President, being the third person in the hierarchy.
All right, Tim Russert in Washington. Tim, thanks very much. And when you get Porter Goss on the phone, maybe you can give us some more information. Thanks, Tim.
We'll be right back to you.
All right, let's go now to MSNBC's Ashley Banfield, who's in Lower Manhattan, standing by with some people who were either inside those buildings or near the buildings when those planes hit. Ashley?
Yeah, hi. I am just about between 5 and 10 blocks north of the actual site of where those two towers have come down. We're obviously having a bit of trouble right now maintaining our location because we just heard one more explosion. That's about the fourth one we've heard. The police are telling us they're either car bombs or they are simply cars that have overheated so much that they're exploding. But every time one of those happens, there's a flurry of activity and there are more emergency vehicles that come down this road. I don't know if you can shoot past me and shoot down into that black cloud in there. That is the cloud that we were in just about 45 minutes ago or so. At the time we were there, when the first trade tower came down, my producer and I were overcome by the cloud of debris and smoke that came at us so rapidly. We had to break down a window to an apartment building. We had to break the window and go into the second door inside just to breathe. We were followed by a police officer and a security guard from the World Trade Center area. I want to show you something if I can. I'm just using a cell phone so that I can hear you because there are no cell lines that are coming out of Manhattan at the time, but see if you can zero in on this right here. This is the kind of debris that we're seeing all over the ground. If you can see the address, 1 World Trade Center, Trade Center, Trade Center, Trade Center, Trade Center.
Okay, obviously we're having some technical problems with Ashley Banfield, who is on the ground near the World Trade Center about 5 blocks away.
Here's the first confirmation from United Airlines. It's confirmed one of its flights crashed in the Pittsburgh area. Flight 93, a Boeing 757. The flight involved originating in Newark. It was bound for San Francisco. No information on how many people were on board. A 757 carries a lot of folks. Anyone who's flown from Newark to San Francisco knows that most of those flights carry a full load.
Okay, so this now brings to 3 the number of confirmed flights that have been involved in this tragic day. American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles, Flight 77 from Washington Dulles Airport to Los Angeles with 58 passengers on board, and now the United flight, Tom, that you just mentioned. And you can say that we have to say that the number of passengers was relatively low on those first flights, and we can only hope this was not a full flight, this United flight.
You know, there was a collapse, obviously, not just of intelligence, but of airport security as well, that many planes were hijacked almost simultaneously.
Although these days, as we know, Tom, and learned from the TWA tragedy, Flight 800, that oftentimes some of these devices are absolutely, it's impossible to see them in our kind of security X-ray machines that you have at typical airports. Some are made of plastiques. They can be very small and virtually undetectable, which is, of course, another major problem for airport security. We're going to go to Bob Bazell, who is at St. Vincent's Hospital. Obviously, we're very concerned about the people who were in the World Trade Center when these 2 planes crashed into them. Bob, tell me about the scene at St. Vincent's Hospital.
Katie, the wounded are starting to come in with great regularity now. Almost every 30 seconds an ambulance pulls up. Some of them are very badly burned. Some are dead. I've seen several dead bodies go in. Cardinal Egan, the head of the Catholic Archdiocese, is standing out on the street giving last rites. Said, may God help us many times over. There's been a call out for blood from all the New York hospitals. People are lined up around the block. People have responded in enormous numbers to that. Everybody seems to want to help in some way. New York has become kind of surrealistic on the streets above Lower Manhattan because all the subways and commuter lines and bridges and tunnels have been shut down, so many people who are not injured are wandering around aimlessly. But in the hospitals, there's so many injured coming in now that they don't have run out of gurneys, and they brought every office chair that they have down and put sheets over that to carry people in. It's an enormous amount of work for all the staff. People have come in. Everybody who was off has been come in. Calls have gone out for specialists, for plastic surgeons, for burn specialists, and it's going to be a very grueling several days ahead.
Well, Bob, the other thing is that I don't know whether you can tell about traffic in the rest of Manhattan, because a lot of our major hospitals are well north of there. Lenox Hill, Columbia Presbyterian, New York Cornell. Are the ambulances able to get through? Have they cleared the traffic? We're in kind of a tomb here in the studios in Midtown.
Tom, I had trouble hearing you just that time. There's a system in place here where there's triaging people down in Lower Manhattan. They're putting sometimes tags around their neck to show some people you see wandering up from Lower Manhattan who have only slight injuries who have been cleared. Others are very seriously injured. Every hospital in the area is involved in a plan to take in some kind of patients. This one where I'm at, St. Vincent's, is one of the closest with a major trauma center. But every hospital is on alert. Every hospital is just taking in what is becoming now a sea of patients.
All right, NBC's Robert Bazell. Bob, thanks very much. Let's go back to Washington and NBC's Tim Russert, who has a guest on the phone, Porter Goss, the head of the House Intelligence Committee. Tim?
Exactly right. Congressman Goss, are you there?
I'm here, Tim.
As the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, what is your official reaction to what we've witnessed this morning?
Well, obviously, I'm horrified. We do our best to make sure there are no surprises like this happening to Americans at home or abroad. It's never 100% sure, and We got the wake-up call again today. It is unbelievable that anybody would do an act like this, basically using innocent victims aboard our commercial airliners as weapons against other innocent victims in our big buildings, our symbols of economy and commerce in New York, and our defense and legislative and executive buildings here in Washington.
When people are watching this at home, Congressman, they're saying to themselves, how could this happen in the United States of America? A complete breakdown in our airport security, a complete breakdown in our airspace security over the Pentagon, the center of our military command. How could something be this vulnerable?
Well, we are a free, open, democratic society, and we take great pride in that. We pay a price for it. We, as you know, if you've ever flown into Washington Reagan Airport, you fly right over the Pentagon. And many times we've commented on how vulnerable the building is for just that reason. That vulnerability was taken advantage of today. As for commercial airliners flying around New York and airspace there, obviously they fly near the trade towers. To be able to say that our airport security works 100%, anybody who flies in America knows that's not true. You answer a few questions before you get on the plane and show a photo ID. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't do mayhem on the plane, as we see from time to time. And tragically, some kind of an organization somewhere has orchestrated all this in an effective fashion. We have great intelligence capabilities out there who keep us constantly on alert about these types of reports. I can tell you I knew of no specific reporting anything of this particular specificity on this day with these targets, but I can tell you that we are scrambling all the time to assess information that would do harm to the United States and its people. And as we know, we've seen our military installations subject to attack, our embassy subject to attack. Before. We stop a lot, but obviously we don't get it all, and we're just going to have to rethink how we do business in today's world and deal with these kinds of threats.
Based on your experience as a honored CIA agent and now as a very highly respected chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, how many organizations, terrorist organizations in the world, are capable of pulling off such a coordinated massive attack?
I would say there's only a handful if we're not talking about state-sponsored terrorism. If you're talking state-sponsored, it could be more, but I don't think we're dealing with state-sponsored. I think we're dealing here with a loose network, a loose association of people who have the same goal, which is an anti-United States goal, who have found a way to get together and network and pull this thing off. Part of the problem with terrorism is that one of the weapons of terrorism is confusion. And one of the hopes now, of course, of the terrorists who perpetrated this is that we will have lots of confusion in the United States, and there will be rumors of other things happening, and that will upset how we go about our business and our behavior and how our law enforcement people react and so forth. That's one thing to deal with, and another thing to deal with, as the President alluded to this morning in his very strong statement, was that we will respond. The question is, against whom? And we want to make absolutely sure when we're dealing with asymmetrical warfare such as this, where we're dealing with innocent people, by and large, who are victims of this, that we respond appropriately and not provoke any other incidents that are unwarranted in the world, but get the people who actually cause this to happen. And that requires good information, and obviously we're in the process of trying to get that information.
But it may take some time to sort through all this, find the fingerprints, and in fact launch any kind of retaliation.
That is certainly true, and one of the hallmarks we may need is patience these days.
Congressman Porter Goss, Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, we thank you very much. We'll be contacting you throughout the day, and we very much appreciate you joining us this morning.
Well, thank you. Add my prayers to the others.
Thank you much. Back to you, Matt.
All right, Tim, thank you very much. We're going to talk to someone here in the studio in a second, but Tom, you've got a phone number for people who are concerned about passengers on board those flights.
American Airlines has confirmed that 2 of its flights were hijacked, and for people who want to know, the number is 1-800-245-0999. United headquarters, you may not be able to get through, obviously, is 847-700-5538. United has confirmed that one of its planes went down near Pittsburgh. American has said that 2 of its planes were involved in the hijackings today, one from Dulles and one from Boston.
All right, apparently United Airlines was involved, is right?
Right. I said that in Pittsburgh.
Okay, right,
yeah.
From Newark en route to San Francisco,
right.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Ron Insana is here. Oh, actually, we're going to go first to Ashley Banfield.
We want to go downtown again. Ron Insana. Oh, no, okay, we're going to, there we go. Ashley Banfield has someone she's talking to.
We're giving out emergency numbers over the airwaves. airways.
numbers.
No, I know, but we're doing that now.
Yes, that's the only thing.
I just wanted to ask
Ashley, can you hear me?
For emergency personnel, either law enforcement or medical.
Do you know anything about those extra
No,
explosions
I do
we
not.
heard?
No, I do not.
Were they car bombs?
I have no idea, ma'am.
Are you being told that we're going to have to move out of this area as well?
I was not told anything relative to that.
What about the sewers? Are they looking for bombs in sewers?
All non-essential personnel. That's all I can tell you.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
obviously, the emergency workers are moving people out of that area. Ron Insana is here with us in the studio. Ron, obviously, you were downtown at some point because we see you have basically soot and debris in your hair and on your jacket. What happened?
Well, one of the MSNBC cameramen and I were trying to get across the street, having driven down to try to cover the event, obviously, for NBC. And as we were going across the street, we were not terribly far from the World Trade Center building, the South Tower. As we were cutting across in a quarantine zone, actually, the building began to disintegrate, and we heard it and looked up and started to see elements of the building come down, and we ran, and honestly, it was like a scene out of Independence Day. Everything began to rain down. It was pitch black around us as the winds were whipping through the corridors in lower Manhattan. I ducked around a corner, got into a car which was open, and it was nighttime for several minutes before things cleared up.
Was this the first tower that collapsed?
I believe it was the first tower that collapsed. This was the South Tower, and as it was coming down, what that looks like there is mild compared to what it was like to be at the center. It was pitch black for blocks.
And was it smoke as well as dust?
It was smoke, it was dust. I assume it was part of the building coming down, and just pieces of a disintegrating building coming down as well.
Obviously, we're very concerned about the triage unit that was set up there to help people who were trying to get out of the building, Ron, to help people who had already been carried out of the building and who were being treated medically. Were you close enough to survey the scene
I was within about
half
a block of the building as it started to come down.
Can you tell us what you saw
there? It
there?
was fairly clear. There were some areas along the street that did have blood and debris. There were no longer people in the area except for a couple of journalists and police officers who were containing the area so people wouldn't cut through.
And once it did begin to clear after that several minutes of pitch darkness, what did you see in the streets then?
It was a very deep gray smoke. It in honesty looked like a bit of a nuclear winter, the type of thing you see in the movies with ash all over the ground, on top of cars, on police cars, on windows. I made my way into a building because it was the one light I could see, and stayed there until a couple of police officers and a few of the people inside the building were able to get into a vehicle. We picked up a few injured people along the way and dropped them off at the hospital.
You did? What were their injuries?
Well, one policeman had a deep gash in his forehead. He was all right. He was clearly, a bit shocked, and the young lady had shrapnel in her arm. Don't know what it was, whether it was part of a building or glass from another building.
Was there a lot of peripheral damage to other buildings and stores
Not really.
in the area? Because when that building came down, one would only imagine all the pieces of steel and concrete that came cascading down as well and hit other places.
I imagine the collateral damage was enormous, but we were probably, I'd say, 2 or 3 blocks away in a building where we holed up for a time until we were fairly comfortable that it was safe to come out. It was truly the most intense and frightening experience I've ever had in my life. It was literally pitch black on the street, and people were, obviously inhaling a great deal of this material as well, so there are many folks who are having difficulty breathing and were wearing facial masks as well.
We're happy you're all right.
We have United Airlines confirms that United Flight 175 from Boston to Los Angeles is down as well. No details yet. It's confirmed that Flight 93, we believe from Newark to San Francisco, is down. No details as yet. That's the one that we think went down in the Pittsburgh area. I wish that we could be more specific. The information is, as you might expect, pretty chaotic, but there have been at least 4 airliners that have been hijacked today.
And Tom, there's going to be an awful lot of scrutiny on the security in Boston at Logan Airport because it now appears that 2 of these flights originated there, and somehow someone managed to get on these planes and hijack them.
Well, this is an event, Ron. We're happy to see you, and
thank you. You have no idea how happy I am to be here.
Yeah, it is a relief. But then you think about the experiences of thousands of other people who are down there in the epicenter of all that, and were there when it occurred. Our hearts go out to them. We don't know what the numbers are yet.
And you hear about Cardinal Egan delivering last rites outside of St. Vincent's Hospital.
And the magnitude of this will go on for some time. This is not just a national tragedy, but this is a national security event of an untold magnitude that this country is going to have to deal with. The president's coming back, and we are at war, in effect, here. This country country has suffered a devastating attack that will cost us in the sense of in loss of life. It will also cost us in terms of our psychological security that we have in this country. We're going to have to revisit a lot of our freedoms as a result of this kind of an attack. And then, of course, there's the whole question of retaliation.
This is an
Who is responsible and what do we do?
Tom, this is an upsetting wire that just came across the transom from the West Bank. It says thousands of Palestinians celebrated Tuesday's terror attacks in the United States, chanting God is great and distributing candy to passers-by, even as their leader, Yasser Arafat, said he was horrified. The U.S. government has become increasingly unpopular in the West Bank and Gaza Strip in the past year of Israeli-Palestinian fighting, with many Palestinians accusing Washington of siding with Israel.
For those of you who think that events in far-off places like the Middle East or in Afghanistan or in the subcontinent or in places in Asia have no effect on us, this is the answer today. This place remains an enormous target in the eyes of a lot of people, and we are so vulnerable because of all those things that make us so great, our freedoms and our sense of security that we have. But America has been changed today by all of this.
We want to go and find out more about what's being done for those who were injured in these attacks. Leslie Van Sant is with the American Red Cross. I believe she's joining us from Washington. Ms. Van Sant, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Matt.
Tell me what kind of resources you have available to you to pour into these areas where, obviously, in Lower Manhattan and in Washington, D.C. and outside Pittsburgh.
Well, our chapters on the area are local disaster volunteers. You know, they are, of course, the first people on the scene and responding. Unfortunately, probably now some of them are also victimized by the event. We're also mobilizing 80,000 units of blood to transfer to the regions as needed, and, you know, taking guidance from emergency management personnel on what assistance we can provide to them to make this, you know, response go smoothly.
Is there anything that, I mean, I know it's early after this has happened, but is there anything you can think of that people might be able to help you out with in terms of donating certain things? You mentioned blood and those things.
Well, you know, we're asking people who are in other parts of the country who are blood donors or maybe not blood donors, maybe they could call and schedule an appointment so we can make sure that the supply stays ready. Our disaster volunteers, our mental health volunteers and health volunteers are going to be responding. You know, this will, as Tom mentioned earlier, this is going to be a long, long response. The emotional trauma, the emotional impact is going to be felt weeks, months into the future, even years. So we're going to be working very hard at this for a long time.
All right, Leslie Van Sant with the American Red Cross. Ms. Van Sant, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Let's go now to Kathleen Zici of New York University Hospital, which is about 5 minutes away from the World Trade Center, where many of the victims have been brought. Kathleen, I know we spoke to you about an hour or so ago. Can you tell me what's going on in the hospital now? Okay, apparently we're having some problems with Kathleen, and I'm sure it's as chaotic there as it was at St. Vincent's, where we heard from Bob Bazell moments ago that there was a line with Cardinal Egan outside delivering last rites to some of the dead who were brought to the hospital. So we'll try to touch base with Kathleen in just a moment. But first, we want to go to Andrea Mitchell once again in Washington. Andrea?
I've been told that the State Department evacuation, Katie, was precautionary only. There was no car bomb, as had at least been reported or rumored, not here on NBC. But in any case, that was precautionary only. There are still some officials there. They are now being redeployed to another location in Virginia. The CIA is still operational. Intelligence officials are still meeting at Langley, but those officials have also evacuated the non-essential employees. The current working theory, as you have been reporting and speculating, is that there is only one terror organization in this world that could coordinate this kind of event, and that would be something operated by Osama bin Laden. Intelligence officials say he is in Afghanistan, where he has been protected by the Taliban, and as we know, the United States has warned the Taliban government of Afghanistan that if there were any attack against the United States, that they would hold Afghanistan responsible, so that we most likely will expect retaliation, military retaliation. But I think right now the full focus of the U.S. government is on finding out how many other possible targets there might be, how many vulnerabilities there might be, making sure that there is no chemical or biological element out there. I spoke to a former Secretary of Defense Bill Cohn and others who had been part of the anti-terror operation planning, and they say that those are the first lines of defense to make sure that there is not some other event, unexpected as this obviously was, that could make Americans vulnerable. Obviously, this is the largest intelligence failure since Pearl Harbor.
All right, Andrea Mitchell. Andrea, thank you. We're going to check in again right now with Kathleen Zicci of New York University Hospital. Kathleen, tell me what the scene is like at your hospital.
Well, we're at NYU Downtown Hospital in Lower Manhattan, and we have had a steady stream of patients coming through the door since the first explosion occurred some hours ago. We have information at this point on 3+ fatalities, plus because there may be additional fatalities that I have not yet been informed of. We have had a severe burn case. One individual is an amputee, a serious neurosurgical injury, a whole range of injuries from both debris, smoke inhalation, respiratory issues related to smoke and debris from the collapse of the two buildings.
So how many medical personnel, Kathleen, do you have working there at NYU Hospital?
We have a medical staff of 500 plus physicians. The entire medical staff has been mobilized, as has the nursing staff, and they are working as hard as it's possible to work.
And tell me again, Kathleen, I know it's hard to estimate how many people you've seen so far.
It's in the hundreds. Our entire cafeteria has been transformed to a triage area, and it is wall-to-wall people at the present time.
All right, Kathleen, thank you very much for that update. I'm sure we'll be checking back with you a bit later on, and thank you very much.
Katie, let's go now to NBC's Bob Hager. And Bob, I think it's important that we recount. A short while ago, we were talking about 4 planes that were unaccounted for. It seems now we know what happened to all those 4 planes, isn't it?
That's it. There's no plane at the moment that we know of that's outstanding that's unaccounted for. And now NTSB is able to match the particular flights to the particular accidents or acts of terrorism. So the 2 planes that hit the World Trade Center were both takeoffs from Boston, one belonging to American Airlines, and it had been bound for Los Angeles. The other belonging to United Airlines, it too was bound for Los Angeles. Those are the 2 planes, the American airliner first and then the United plane, that went into the World Trade Center. The other 2 flights, the one that went into the Pentagon was an American Airlines flight bound from Washington's Dulles Airport to Los Angeles, and the plane that's down southeast of Pittsburgh is a United flight. It had been bound from Newark to San Francisco. I heard one report that it was Newark via Washington National to San Francisco, but I'm not sure of that. Let me tell you the flight numbers. The Boston takeoffs were American Airlines Flight 10. It had 92 aboard. That's one of the ones that hit the World Trade Center.
Bob, let me just interrupt you there for a second, because we've been reporting all morning that it was American Airlines Flight 11.
You know, I'm mistaken. You're right. It's 11. American Flight 11. Thank you very much, with 92 aboard. And then the United Airlines that left from Boston and hit the other World Trade Center tower was United's 175. I don't have a figure on how many on board it. The flight that went into the Pentagon was American Airlines Flight 77, bound Washington Dulles to Los Angeles. There were 64 people aboard it. And the United Airlines flight that went down south of Pittsburgh was United's Flight 93, and there's no number on the number of passengers on it. But again, you have 4 flights known to have been hijacked, known to have crashed, and no flights at the moment that are outstanding that we know of.
Bob, the crash that you just mentioned near Pittsburgh, I just want to say that that is a United flight that was en route from Newark to San Francisco. Is that accurate?
That's what I have, and I've heard it 2 ways. It's Newark to San Francisco. I heard one report that there was an intermittent stop that it was to make at Washington's Reagan National, but that's not confirmed, so it might be erroneous.
Yeah, United is now confirming that, apparently, Robert. We also have a report from the mayor of Cleveland, Michael White, saying that a Boeing 767 out of Boston made an emergency landing at Cleveland Hopkins International Airport because of concerns it may have a bomb on board, but no confirmation of
We
that.
also have, just because I have a personal friend who was flying from Kennedy to Los Angeles this morning, that plane was diverted to Kansas City. So apparently many planes that were en route to certain locations have made mandate special emergency landings in the wake of this, and because of concerns that there may be more problems aboard more airplanes.
And what happens, unfortunately, in situations like this, if the terrorists themselves don't call in to say that there's a bomb on board, you have the twisted minds of other people who call in and say, well, by the way, there's a bomb on board that flight. So it is chaos in the skies for those flights that were already in the air. Other flights have been grounded. This country has been immobilized in terms of where its attention now is focused on New York City and Washington, D.C., the tragedies in Pittsburgh as well. No air travel, no financial markets. All national monuments are being evacuated. The president has been rushed back to Washington, D.C. The Pentagon has been attacked by an airliner, in effect, and on Capitol Hill, code red. The Speaker of the House was taken to a very secure area because he's third in line, succession to the President of the United States. We are, as we have been saying this morning, in a state of war with terrorism.
And as a result, the Army has been placed at ThreatCon Delta. That means that armed personnel will be guarding U.S. installations, not only here in the United States, but in other parts of the world. You're looking at the southern tip of Manhattan Island here in New York City, and for so many years we've come accustomed to seeing the World Trade Center standing there in the background behind the Empire State Building that you see in the foreground. Those two towers no longer stand after a terrorist attack this morning. NBC's Pat Dawson is close to the scene of that attack. Pat? Pat,
Matt,
can you hear me?
if we are, yes, I can, Matt. If there is a war, war against terrorism that started, rather ongoing right now, it started here at about 8:45 this morning, as you described. A big hole in the skyline at the southern end, the southern tip of Manhattan Island, where the two World Trade Center towers have stood for the last 25 years, 110 stories high. They are no longer there. Just moments ago, I spoke to the chief of safety for the New York City Fire Department, who was obviously one of the first people here on the scene after those two planes were crashed into the side, we assume, of the World Trade Center towers, which used to be behind me over there. Chief Albert Turry told me that he was here just literally 10 or 15 minutes after the events that took place this morning. That is the first crash. He said that at one point he had roughly 10 alarms. That would equate to roughly 200 to 225 New York City firefighters who were in the building. This was after the crash, trying to rescue civilians who were in there. Now, earlier this morning on the Today Show, we spoke to the director of the World Trade Center. He said that at that hour of the morning, you could have upwards of 10,000 people in each of those towers. That would be 20,000 people total in each tower. The chief of safety, as I said, chief safety of the Fire Department of New York City, told me that shortly after 9 o'clock, he had roughly 10 alarms, roughly 200 men in the building trying to effect rescues of some of those civilians who were in there, and that basically he received word of the possibility of a secondary device, that is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place, and then an hour after the first hit here, with the first crash that took place, he said, there was another explosion that took place in one of the towers here. So obviously, according to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building. One of the secondary devices he thinks that took place after the initial impact was, he thinks, may have been on the plane that crashed into one of the towers. The second device he thinks, he speculates, was probably planted in the building. So that's what we have been told by Albert Turry, who is the chief of safety for the New York City Fire Department. He told me that just moments ago. Now, we are continuing to hear explosions. Here downtown, and what we've been told by some of the fire officials is that there are some gas lines that occasionally are exploding down there, because obviously, as you can imagine, there are a lot of open gas lines down in the southern part of Manhattan where the World Trade Center towers used to be. As far as the situation right here, basically what we have are hundreds of New York City firefighters and other New York City rescue units who are massed here. There is a cordon just down there. We are not sure, to be honest, if some rescue workers have tried to go beyond that point as yet. When we spoke to the head of the Port Authority Police, that would be the organization that is in charge of the World Trade Center building itself, the Port Authority Police chief told us that they were at that point, about, I'd say 40 minutes ago, about to make a decision on whether or not it was safe to send emergency workers back in there. But the bottom line is that according to the chief of safety of the New York City Fire Department, he says that he probably lost a great many men in those secondary explosions, and he said that there were literally hundreds, if not thousands of people in those two towers when the explosions took place. He said everything above the 60th floor was extremely difficult to get to, as you can imagine.
Pat Dawson.
Back to you.
Pat Dawson, thanks very much. We have some videotape, I understand, that we're going to show you from the West Bank. These are Palestinian celebrations in the wake of Tuesday's terror attacks in the United States. Apparently, Palestinians took to the street chanting, "God is great." People were throwing candy, distributing candy to passersby. The U.S. government obviously has become increasingly unpopular, particularly in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, because Palestinians feel that the U.S. government has sided with Israel. One man, Nawal Abdel Fattah, wearing a long black dress, threw sweets in the air, saying, actually that's a woman, pardon me, saying she was happy because, quote, America is the head of the snake. America always stands by Israel in its war against us. Meanwhile, Yasser Arafat emerged to speak with reporters, the head of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. He said, "We are completely shocked. It's unbelievable. We completely condemn this very dangerous attack, and I convey my condolences to the American people, to the American president, and to the American administration, not only in my name, but on behalf of the Palestinian people."
And this comes on a day, Katie, in which obviously there's been a steady deterioration of the situation in the Middle East, but Shimon Peres was to meet today with Yasser Arafat in the West Bank. There has been some criticism of the Bush administration for not getting more involved in the peacemaking efforts in the Middle East in the past few weeks from within the Republican Party as well.
Because it has gotten increasingly volatile.
It has. There's been a steady escalation of violence, incursions by Israelis into Palestinian towns and declaring martial law and then pulling back. And everyone thought that the bomb was ticking in the Middle East. No one expected anything of these kinds of consequences to be visited upon this country in this horrific way that we have been witness to today. It is one more example, as we have been saying this morning, of events in far-off places that have such an enormous impact here, because the United States is, in the eyes of so many people who are opposed to our system of government and our alliances, is the devil incarnate. And today, this is a very sophisticated, very cold-blooded, very widespread attack carried out with the most chilling kind of efficiency on several of the great nerve centers of our system of government and our way of